Congratulations.
By calling the counseling office and will be
special regional information.
The highway.
Very good.
Are you getting all you can from your home video system? You will with a home theater system from Audio Logic. Rental tapes and video discs, as well as many broadcast and cable programs, are now available in amazing Dolby Pro Logic surround sound, designed to recreate the theater experience in the home. Audio Logic can set you up with this unique sound experience using some of your current equipment for less than you'd expect. Sounds so real, you'd think you were at the movies.
Except you won't have an annoying person talking through the whole movie.
For brands on the cutting edge, it's Audio Logic.
10, roger. 6.
This is Apollo Control.
Okay. All systems are go. One small step for man. What a beautiful view.
Accutron. A watch whose time has come. Again. Available at Morrissey Fine Jewelers.
CNN Headline News, I'm Lynn Russell. It's beginning to look like a Democratic night. With most of the eastern states reporting, Democratic presidential nominee Bill Clinton is piling up a big lead over President Bush in today's balloting. Chuck Roberts is keeping up with the details at our election desk. Chuck, what's new?
Well, Lynn, thank you. There are predictions this vote total tonight may pass the 100 million mark for the first time in U.S. history. Long lines, long waits reported at polling places. That reverses the lengthy trend of diminishing voter participation, which began in 1960. Heavy turnouts appear to be the rule from coast to coast and corner to corner. An election official in Los Angeles said he's never seen lines this long, and an official in Portland, Maine said everybody and their uncle is voting today.
I voted for George Bush because I think he's done an excellent job. He's done a lot for our country, and he's going to continue.
I voted for Bill Clinton because I'm a woman, and I believe that he's the best representative for women's rights.
Ross Perot is not interested in what either Bush or Clinton have to propose for the economy.
The polls in Bill Clinton's home state, Arkansas, have just now closed, and as expected, projections show voters there are supporting their native son. Here's the Arkansas. We don't have the numbers, but here's the winner. Bill Clinton will win the 6 electoral votes up for grabs there. He will win in a lot of other states, including some very important ones. He has already won in Illinois and in Pennsylvania. There's the Illinois vote, 67 to 27%, but as you see, it's a very light count at this point. And in Pennsylvania, 4% counted. Clinton well in front, 49 to 33%. In the president's home state of Texas, it's still too close. Bush in front, but only by a couple thousand votes. 44% counted. It's almost dead even there. Florida is an important state for the president. He carried it so easily 4 years ago. He is in front right now in the early going, but it might go the other way. Again, only 4% known, counted. Clinton has won in neighboring Georgia. Lots of money, lots of energy has been spent in Georgia, but it's a Clinton state this time. And moving to the Northeast, first let's take a look at Massachusetts. Clinton has won there, no surprise there. And Clinton is the winner in New Jersey, the first time a Democrat has carried that state since Lyndon Johnson in 1964. Clinton has won it. He's 3% ahead with about a quarter of the vote counted, but he has been declared the winner. In Democratic Vice Presidential nominee Al Gore's home state of Tennessee, no problem for Bill Clinton there, 21% counted. And in Michigan, another one of the more hotly contested races, Bill Clinton has been declared the winner there as well. So far, Clinton's racking a big lead both in electoral votes and popular votes. Taking a look now at the popular vote, if we could. We have Bush in front in the popular count, 43 to 42%. but a lot of the states haven't been heard from yet. And the electoral vote, it's really lopsided. Clinton is well over halfway home. He has 164 electoral votes counted for him, 270, the magic number needed to win. Ross Perot ended his unorthodox presidential campaign on an unusual note. After initially announcing he'd voted absentee, Perot voted in person in a Dallas polling place. He expressed irritation as photographers showed up, saying, "I thought voting was supposed to be private." Despite polls predicting he'll finish third, Perot told voters and volunteers to prepare for the inauguration.
As I've said again and again, I'd love for everybody to vote their conscience, whatever that is.
You think a lot of these are new voters, people that the pro-volunteers registered?
Well, I think the pro-volunteers, they certainly have registered a lot of people, and they've done a fine job. So the main thing is I'm glad everybody's participating. That's the way the system's supposed to work.
Saying he's pleased the campaign is over, President Bush voted in his adopted hometown of Houston today. He ignored reporters' questions about how he expects to do in the vote count. He took advantage of the post-campaign lull to do some shopping today, buying a fishing reel and a quail hunting license. He almost always spends part of December hunting quail in South Texas. He also paid a call in a music store, picked up some country music tapes today. Bill Clinton voted in his hometown today in Little Rock, jokingly explaining that he chose Al Gore for running mate, along with the other fellow on the ticket. Clinton piled up frequent flyer miles before marking this ballot. He visited several states on a 29-hour, 4,000-mile trip. It included stops in Colorado, New Mexico, states with relatively small electoral votes. In Denver, Clinton told why he campaigned so much in the Rocky Mountain West.
I have worked hard here when people said, why isn't Democrats working in Colorado or Montana or Nevada or Wyoming or New Mexico or any of the other states here, South Dakota? And I said, because the Democrats of the new Democratic Party represent the West a lot better than the old Republican Party of trickle-down economics, no environmental policy, no energy policy, no vision for the future.
Representatives from both major parties and the Perot campaign appeared this afternoon on CNN's Larry King Live. They divulged some successes and difficulties of this presidential race.
I think it was run brilliantly. I think we had a clear vision of how the campaign ought to proceed. We were very disciplined. Bill Clinton was a very disciplined candidate. And I think there's a reason for that. The big difference between he and George Bush is someone who wanted to be president, but had no idea what he wanted to do as president.
The problem we've had waging the campaign about against Bill Clinton is he keeps changing. He's a chameleon on plaid, and it's hard to shadow box. It's like fighting with mercury.
We've done an extraordinary job of empowering people and informing people that they can make a difference. Doing it on such short notice has been difficult, but United We Stand America is going to be around for a while.
And Perot running mate James Stockdale voted early this morning in California. He left for Dallas to join the Texas billionaire. Vice President Dan Quayle got in a pickup basketball game. He took care of an election day ritual, by the way, getting his teeth cleaned. Reclined in the dentist chair, he said he gazed the whole time at his favorite bumper sticker of this campaign, "Annoy the Media, Re-elect President Bush." Quayle will watch the vote counting in Indianapolis. And Bill Clinton's running mate Al Gore, who made an unsuccessful bid for the White House 4 years ago, voted in his hometown, Carthage, Tennessee. He then headed for Little Rock with Tipper Gore and what the Democrats hope will be a raucous victory party. All right, let's check congressional races. Voters may sweep into office a record number of women and minority candidates, and they may usher in the biggest number of fresh faces since 1932. Democrats may wind up with 60 seats in the Senate. That's well enough to break the Republican filibuster if the bloc holds steady. One Republican seat up for grabs is in New York. Incumbent Al D'Amato and State Attorney General Bob Abrams have been fighting a nasty campaign. Senator Pothole is how they call Alphonse D'Amato, but he's had some ethical problems, and Bob Abrams has run a strong campaign. It's still too close to call in New York. Other Senate contests, Dale Bumpers in Arkansas has been declared the winner. The incumbent is going in for a fourth term. He's defeated Minister Mike Huckabee. In Ohio, John Glenn has just been declared the winner over Lieutenant Governor Mike DeWine. A very close race, though, as you see DeWine in front in the popular count, but John Glenn, by exit poll reckoning, has been declared the winner. In Connecticut, Christopher Dodd, the incumbent, will go back for another term, as will Bob Dole in Kansas, the Senate Minority Leader, easily having defeated a female candidate. And in Illinois, speaking of women, Carol Moseley Braun will be the first black woman elected to the U.S. Senate, serving a full term, she having defeated Alan Dixon in the primary. And in Maryland, Barbara Mikulski has been declared the winner for some time. When Election Day began, Colorado was the only state with a limit on how long members of Congress could serve. But other states could join that list tonight as voters consider ballot measures. The exit polling shows term limits winning in 2 states. In Ohio, you see the yes well in front, 69 to 31%. And in the Sunshine State, apparently sunset legislation will also win the day. Checking Florida, you see 76 to 24% is the spread in the early going. 12 states have ballot questions on gambling tonight, along with the Virgin Islands. The issue has simmered in Georgia since 1990 when the incoming governor, Zell Miller, promised the Zell Miller lottery. Very early returns show voters rejecting it. Colorado and Oregon could officially go on record against homosexuality. Colorado's Amendment 2 would bar civil rights laws from covering gays, lesbians, or bisexuals. And Measure 9 in Oregon would require that public schools declare homosexuality and sadomasochism wrong and perverse. The polls are still open in those states, but the latest polls, that is the poll taking, show those measures were losing. While Headline News is not declaring a presidential winner yet, 2 British newspapers already have. The Wednesday morning edition of The Guardian reads, "It's President Clinton." The tabloid Today screams, "America hails President Bill." Those papers risk embarrassment, of course, along the lines of that Chicago Tribune Dewey defeats Truman edition in 1948. In fact, polls have yet to close in 21 states. Well, I have another full report in about 20 minutes. Top of the hour. Lynn, back to you.
Thank you, Chuck. Other news this evening. A federal appeals court has ruled the Bush administration cannot enforce what's come to be known as the abortion gag rule. In a unanimous ruling, the court ordered the government to get public comment and hold hearings before the rule can be imposed. The gag rule prohibits anyone but doctors from discussing abortion with patients at federally funded clinics. No word from the Justice Department on whether it will appeal the ruling. Now it's up to President Bush to decide whether to deliver to Congress new recommendations on the role of service women in the U.S. military. A presidential commission says women should be allowed to serve on some warships, but it says women should continue to be banned from ground fighting and from flying combat missions in Air Force and Navy aircraft. Yugoslavian Premier Milan Panic barely survived a no-confidence vote in the upper house of parliament today. Administration aides say his government will keep trying to achieve peace with the neighboring republics of Bosnia-Herzegovina and Croatia. In Bosnia, scores more refugees have fled the mounting casualties. 24 people have been killed, more than 100 have been injured in the fighting in Bosnia since yesterday morning. The British House of Commons votes tomorrow on whether to ratify the Maastricht Treaty. Not all Britons are sure exactly how this treaty would affect their country. Its supporters are trying to change that, as Robert Hull reports.
Opening for business in Berkshire this morning, Europe's Information Roadshow on its mission to explain and convert.
Europeans voting in the same parliament. It's a disgrace. You know what's going to happen, don't you? You know what's going to happen? It's going to be compulsory spaghetti. That's what it's going to be.
Such over-the-top views are alien to a generation eager to learn more about life across the Channel. But their knowledge of the Maastricht Treaty is, to say the least, sketchy.
I don't understand a lot of it. I don't think we've been informed enough about what it'll mean for us and our generation.
Outside the roadshow, matters are even worse.
I've got no idea. No idea what I keep reading about it, but you just can't understand it, can you? No one can.
No one's sent a leaflet round, no one's tried to educate me on the subject. But the Maastricht Treaty, what do you think the Maastricht Treaty is?
What is it? Do you know?
No, I don't think
they don't know.
Now, it's fair to say that many have tried to explain the Maastricht Treaty. This document from the European Commission runs to some 11 pages. This from MEP Pauline Green, Maastricht in 10 minutes, runs to 10 pages of text. So here, in just under a minute, is our précis of what the Maastricht Treaty could mean to you. The treaty provides for change in 3 main areas. Moves towards a single currency across Europe, greater cooperation, especially in foreign and defence policies, and a fund to transfer money from rich to poor countries within the community. In everyday life, it could mean no changing money when travelling in Europe, driving on the right, and a chance to stand for election anywhere in Europe.
It means, for instance, that Gaza in Rome can actually vote in the next local elections in Rome, and indeed can put himself forward as a candidate in Rome.
Pro-Europe MP Giles Brandreth is offering his explanation on a video, Europe the Movie.
We're in Europe, we're going to stay there, and therefore we must make it work to our advantage. And that is essentially what the video is about.
Europe the Movie could face a tough test at the box office. Convincing the Eurosceptics may prove a mission impossible. Robert Hall, ITN, Berkshire.
And Headline Consumer News is next.
This is CNN Headline News.
You've had a long day, but it's finally done. You want a nice clean room and a pool in the sun, with ground floor rooms for everyone, and the lowest rates when you come in. So you save tonight where kids stay free. Save tonight at a Night's Inn. Save tonight at a Night's Inn. Call 1-800-THE-NIGHTS. That's 1-800-843-5644 and save tonight.
1 a.m., still awake. Your fever's worse. The coughing and congestion just keep you awake. This flu you handled today now feels out of control. You've got the night flu and you need maximum relief. Theraflu introduces new maximum strength nighttime, the strongest hot liquid formula ever made. It relieves your worst flu symptoms so you can get the sleep you desperately need. New maximum strength nighttime from Theraflu. Maximum flu relief so you can sleep.
Still at Grand Central, got 1,037,500 copies. The Pitney Bowes copier is still working. How does that look?
Identical. I have an audition this afternoon.
Copies in my resume.
Need a couple more copies. My music.
A lot of people coming up making free copies, and the machine's been purring like a kid.
The flyer for my rap band, Too Slim to Be Large.
What are you doing now?
Always need lots of copies of the resume.
Just kick the thing. And the Pitney Bowes 9070 has got 1,051,088 copies after copy after copy.
Salary, $31,000. That is your present salary. Have you ever declared bankruptcy, Mr. Howard?
Bill? Hempel. Hempel. I want to fix up my bathroom.
Bathroom? I thought it was a car loan.
Mr. Hempel.
I thought it was Hazer.
Hazer. It is Hazer. I'm Hempel.
It is a car loan. You want to have your bathroom fixed, too?
He wants to have his bathroom fixed, Mr. Hempel.
Avoid the confusion. Finance your new car with GMAC right at your GM dealership. Nobody knows more about auto financing and leasing.
There isn't much light looking down the economic tunnel. The government's index of leading economic indicators dropped 0.3% in September. That matches the revised figures for August. The drop in commodity prices led the negative factors in September. Several economists think it's a sign of sluggishness, but not necessarily recession. Caution on Wall Street as traders waited along with everyone else for the results of the U.S. presidential election. The Dow Jones Industrials fell almost 10 points to close at 3252. More than 208 million shares changed hands. Germany and the United States rank among the world's economic powerhouses. Several other countries have high growth potential, and there are ways for U.S. investors to tap in. Beverly Shook has a look.
Every investor would like to pick the next blockbuster stock. Many try by buying into what are called emerging growth companies. These days, emerging growth markets are seen as emerging blockbusters. Could the next Japan be Thailand or Taiwan, Argentina or Brazil? These are considered emerging markets, way short of maturity, but where rapid growth is occurring as the nation's industry and trade blossom. Mutual funds have cut through the red tape, language, currency, and regulatory problems to make investing in global up-and-comers much easier. The average emerging markets fund has risen almost 7% in value this year. That's a better return than the average fund that invests in developed overseas economies. In fact, the two biggest emerging market funds, the Templeton and Morgan Stanley funds, have jumped 7% and 15% this year. Both trade on the New York Stock Exchange. What makes for a winning emerging markets fund? The skill of the fund manager, of course, and the economic and political performance of the markets he or she invests in. When Brazil's president faced a financial scandal, for instance, the stock market there went into a steep fall and U.S. investors lost money. Other smaller stock markets have been volatile, too. Remember that in September alone, Italy, Spain, and Sweden all showed double-digit losses. But the biggest risk to U.S. investors is the dollar. If the dollar goes up in value while you hold overseas shares in an overseas currency, you lose money. You win if the dollar falls. Most managers suggest small investors send no more than 10% of their cash overseas. That's your money. Beverly Shook, CNN Business News, New York.
The European community agreed today to bar cosmetics companies from testing products on animals beginning in 1998. But Britain forged a compromise. The deadline can be suspended for up to 2 years if companies don't produce alternative tests. As many as 50,000 animals are killed or maimed in Europe every year to test cosmetics. In Great Britain, an unusual court case wants to know where's the beef. Seems a company called Bird's Eye Walls is selling TV dinners containing meat entrees with a certain percentage of meat substitute, texturized vegetable protein. Bird's Eye is being sued for false advertising since its packaging contains words like 100% pure beef burgers. How tough is the job market? Interest in volunteer work is soaring. More than 10% of all law students at Harvard had public service jobs last summer. Dozens of new graduates are in public service law positions. Some job bank directors say college students find volunteering more meaningful than corporate work, not to mention more easily available. CNN Headline Sports is next.
This is CNN Headline News.
There is one true constant here, and that is the beauty of this land is only matched by the grace of those who call it home. Come, experience the majesty and warmth of Western Canada, the Yukon and Alaska, with Holland America West Tours.
All across the USA, great deals on the road. I go Hojo.
Stay at any Howard Johnson or Hojo Inn for great sale rates. Then get $750 in travel discounts. Check in with your Visa card and we'll give you $100 in instant bonus coupons. Plus, we're giving away a vacation a week to anywhere we are.
America turns to orange. Howard Johnson today.
For reservations, call 1-800-I-GO-HOJO.
Your company's biggest bid, the biggest proposal of your career. Before a power disturbance ruins your future, you need backups. Uninterruptible power supply from APC. Backups gives you instant battery backup power to protect your critical data and the $25,000 insurance policy against surge damage. So don't let power problems pull the plug on your productivity. Join over 1 million satisfied users of backups. APC. Because your business can't stop when your power does.
Let's add a few graphics.
I like that.
And if we add another color.
At Pip Printing, we know it's not just another brochure or presentation, it's your business.
This is great.
Pip Printing. Give us a call. We'll show you why we're the best business printer in the business.
Tears of pain, tears of joy. But when your eyes are dry, soothe them with the tears of Murine. Closer to your own tears than other leading eye drops or artificial tears. Murine, natural tears formula.
In all right. CNN Headline Sports. Yeah, you might have to wait a while for an official winner to all these political elections, but baseball has an official winner already for their National League Rookie of the Year balloting. It is Eric Karros of the Dodgers. He went a total of 20 times this summer. He also hit .257 and drove in 88 runs. Numbers like that helped him pick up 22 of a possible 24 first-place votes. He outdistanced Montreal outfielder Mose Alou and Pittsburgh knuckleball pitcher Tim Wakefield for the honor. More baseball news centers on a trade as the Yankees sent all-star outfielder Roberto Kelly to the National League and the Reds for outfielder Paul O'Neill and minor league first baseman Joe DeBerry. The Reds had expressed disappointment in the performance of the 29-year-old Neal this summer. He hit .246 with just 14 home runs. A total of 5 contests on the NHL ice this evening. Chicago is taking on struggling Washington. They've dropped 5 of their last 6. Quebec is putting their 3-game winning streak on the line on the ice in Hartford. This is the first meeting between these two Adams Division rivals. The Islanders are at the Igloo in Pittsburgh trying to hand the Stanley Cup champions just their second defeat of the year. After a 5-game homestand and a new coach, St. Louis opens a 3-game road trip in the expansion town of Tampa Bay. And the expansion team of the Ottawa Senators is trying to snap a 10-game winless streak in Edmonton. And there's an NBA trade to tell you about. Headed south is New Jersey point guard Mookie Blaylock. Headed north is Atlanta point guard Romeo Robinson. That means the sensational Kenny Anderson is now running the show for Chuck Daly and the Mets in Jay-Z. I'm Dan Arnold Wright. Sing on it. Headline Sports.
This is CNN Headline News.
Goodbye, old Regal. Hello, new Regal. The 1993 Buick Regal sedan. This story isn't unusual. There's a real love affair between Buick owners and their automobiles.
They have amazed people for centuries, but no one is really sure how these massive structures were built. Until now. Nova travels to Egypt to test various theories and actually build a pyramid. The catch? They can only use tools available in ancient Egypt. Explore the mysteries within this old pyramid.
Tune in to Iowa Public Television Wednesday at 7.
Good evening, I'm Tom Bearden. This is the latest PBS election update. At this hour, the polls have closed in 27 states and the District of Columbia. Here's how things stand in some of the states where the polls have closed. In Texas, a very important state for the Republicans with 32 electoral votes, George Bush is ahead with 43% of the popular vote, Bill Clinton with 39%, Ross Perot at 18%. In Florida, another key state for the president, he's leading with 44% of the vote, Clinton with 36%, and Perot at 20%. In Pennsylvania, with 11% of the precincts reporting, the networks have projected Bill Clinton as the winner with 49% of the vote to Bush's 33% and Perot's 18%. In Illinois, another key battleground state, Clinton again the projected winner, 50% of the vote to 35% for Bush and 15% for Perot. In Ohio, too close to call at this hour, 6% of the precincts reporting, 43% for Bush, 40% for Clinton, and nothing for Perot. Early returns in Michigan, however, the exit polls have projected Clinton the winner at 40% and Bush at 42%. However, only 2% of the precincts reporting. Again, those are exit polls. In New Jersey, a projected winner, Bill Clinton at 43%, George Bush with 42%, Ross Perot at 15%, another key state for the president. In North Carolina, 25% of the precincts reporting, too close to call at this point. Clinton slightly ahead at 44% to Bush's 43%. In Georgia, Bill Clinton, the projected winner with 46% of the popular vote, George Bush at 39%, Perot at 15%. In Virginia, 56% of the precincts reporting and a substantial lead in the popular vote. However, the exit polls still show Virginia too close to call, 49% for the president, 38% for Governor Clinton. In Indiana, George Bush, the projected winner, no surprise there, 43% of the vote to Clinton's 38% and Perot's 19%. In Massachusetts, 8% of the precincts reporting Bill Clinton with a substantial lead and the projected winner at 52% to Bush's 28% and Perot's 20%. In Arkansas, Governor Clinton's home state, very, very early returns. However, the exit polls project the governor of Arkansas to win his home state with 61% of the vote. In West Virginia, again early returns, only 7% reporting, but Clinton leading and the projected winner with 53% of the vote. In Connecticut, 38% of the precincts reporting. Clinton, the projected winner there, 45 to 34 to 21 for Perot. Any candidate getting a simple majority of a state's popular vote will be awarded its all-important electoral votes. At least 270 are needed to win. Based on where the popular vote stands now, this is how the electoral vote is now being projected. George Bush with 28 electoral votes on the boards by now. Bill Clinton with a commanding lead at 176 electoral votes, and Ross Perot with no electoral votes at this hour. In terms of the projected states won, we have a graphic to show you how the national map looks at this hour. And at this point in the voting this evening, Bill Clinton is the projected winner in 17 states, and George Bush is the projected winner in only 3 states. We also have a projected winner in a key Senate race we can tell you about at this hour. That is in Illinois. Carol Moseley Braun is now projected to be the winner in that race. She is the first black woman ever to be elected to the United States Senate. It is a history-making event for the state of Illinois. Braun, a former state representative and a current Cook County Recorder of Deeds, became a celebrity and an instant favorite in her upset vote, but she is the projected winner tonight. That concludes this election update. I'm Tom Bearden in New York.
This is PBS.
Stay tuned for a summary of Iowa election returns from Iowa Public Television. All across the country, voters are flocking to the polls, and Iowa has been no exception, with long lines and waits reported. Despite chilly weather, some precincts are anticipating a 75% or higher voter turnout, and nationally, a record turnout is possible. Iowa polls close at 9 o'clock, so if you haven't done so yet, you still have an hour to cast your ballot. Well, since the polls are still open, there are no Iowa results yet. And the final numbers are still not in on the presidential race nationally. But no matter, in London, the Guardian newspaper headline declared at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time that it's President Clinton. Well, we'll wait for the final results, which in Iowa include the nation's only vote on an equal rights amendment, a spirited race in Iowa's 3rd Congressional District, 2 incumbents going face-to-face in Iowa's 2nd District, and a 9-way race for the U.S. Senate seat. So stay tuned to Iowa Public Television. Coming up in just a moment, you can enjoy the talents of Paul McCartney. And we and the McNeil-Lehrer News team will be back at 8:54. And if you haven't voted yet, you still have an hour to do so.
A watch whose time has come. Again. Available at Morrissey Fine Jewelers.
CNN Headline News. I'm Lynn Russell. Bill Clinton is inching his way toward a goal he set for himself as a boy, a 4-year stay in the White House. Right now, it's all coming down to numbers that are looking increasingly bleak for George Bush. Chuck Roberts is tracking all the results of today's voting at our election desk. Chuck?
Thanks, Lynn. Those numbers are pouring in now from 11 states where the polls have just closed, and President Bush needs to carry just about all of them if he wants to pull a come-from-behind win in the Electoral College count. Right now, he is well behind. As you see, these are the states showing Clinton in front. He has 238 electoral votes already in his column. George Bush with 33, having carried only Nebraska, Oklahoma, Indiana, and South Carolina. Ross Perot is yet to win a state. And in the national popular vote count, with 13% counted, Clinton is in front now for the first time this evening, by the way. Clinton is in front by 2 percentage points, with, again, 13% counted. State by state, let's take a look at New York first. Clinton is on top there, expected to win. He's been declared the winner now. The poll just closed in New York. In Wisconsin, Clinton has been leading for some time. It's still undecided, though, but Clinton was in front the last time we looked. Again, that's a poll just closed. In Minnesota, Clinton has been declared the winner there. With 40, he is behind in the popular vote, but these are somewhat older numbers. Clinton has won Minnesota. In the Florida contest, we have the president in front, 42 to 39%. And in Ohio, a battleground state to be sure, President Bush is enjoying a very small lead with a little less than 10% counted. Texas, George Bush's home state, Bill Clinton is, and that's Pennsylvania, first of all. Clinton has been declared the winner there. 46 to 35% is the spread based on the exit polling. And finally, in Texas, George Bush is ahead by 3 percentage points with 11% counted. We should add, Bush has also won South Carolina and Oklahoma, and Bill Clinton has just been declared the winner in Delaware. After campaigning all night, Bill Clinton took his 12-year-old daughter, Chelsea, into a Little Rock voting booth to show her how to vote. The governor wound up with that grueling 13-month campaign with a marathon 29-hour swing from New Jersey to Colorado. After a morning jog, George Bush voted with wife Barbara in their adopted home state of Texas. The president did not speak with reporters afterward except to say he's very pleased this campaign is finally over. He joked to one voter, "I haven't got anything else to do all day." But he did have a few things to do. He picked up a quail hunting license and some country music tapes along with a fishing reel. Ross Perot kept up his unorthodox campaign to the end. His security guards led reporters staking out the mansion on a wild goose chase in a decoy limo. But despite all that, reporters still caught up with the independent candidate as he voted in Dallas. His comment, "I thought voting was supposed to be private." The campaign spin doctors are still hard at work. Representatives of the three major campaigns appeared this afternoon on Larry King Live, and each offered a different take on how the campaign season progressed.
I think it was run brilliantly. I think we had a clear vision of how the campaign ought to proceed. We were very disciplined. Bill Clinton was a very disciplined candidate. And I think there's a reason for that. The big difference between he and George Bush is someone who wanted to be president, but had no idea what he wanted to do as president.
The problem we've had waging the campaign about against Bill Clinton is he keeps changing. He's a chameleon on plaid, and it's hard to shadow box. It's like fighting with mercury.
We've done an extraordinary job of empowering people and informing people that they can make a difference. Doing it on such short notice has been difficult, but United We Stand America is going to be around for a while.
Let's catch you up on the vice presidential nominees. The vice presidential candidate for Bill Clinton, Al Gore, is with Clinton in Little Rock now, monitoring the election results, having arrived at what could be a victory party already. The Tennessee senator voted earlier in Carthage, Tennessee. Gore said he's excited and has a good feeling about this evening. Vice President Dan Quayle got in a game of hoops today after he voted in Indiana. He's waiting out returns in his hometown of Huntington. He said he's sure it'll be a fairly long night. In the nation's Senate races, the Democrats are defending 20 seats this evening, Republicans 15. It appears the balance of power will stay basically the same. Indeed, the Democrats may pad their majority a little bit. The latest projected winners from states where the polls have already closed include Arizona. That's a Republican winner. John McCain, the incumbent, had no problems today with the challenge of Democratic activist Claire Sargent and former Governor Ev Meekum, who ran as an independent. And let's check Colorado. Terry Considine, the former state senator, is losing, or last time we checked, to Nighthorse Campbell. That's an open seat. Tim Wirth has retired from the Senate. It's still too close to call in Wisconsin. Republican incumbent Bob Kasten's been struggling against the Democratic challenger Russ Feingold. Feingold, by the way, said Elvis endorsed him. In South Dakota, the freshman Senator Tom Daschle is up against teacher Charlene Harr. We have Daschle, the winner there. In Ohio, John Glenn's barely holding out against a challenge by the Republican Lieutenant Governor Mike DeWine. Glenn will go back to the Senate, though, for another term. The former astronaut and hero has won already in Ohio. DeWine is actually ahead in the vote count just a little bit, or was the last time we looked. As you see now, Glenn is in fact in front both in vote count and in exit polling. Republicans cast Glenn as the most vulnerable of the Democratic incumbents. The record number of women running for Senate tagged this the Year of the Women. And it seems that prediction is holding up. In Illinois, Carol Moseley Braun is poised to become the first black woman elected to the Senate. Here are the numbers from Illinois. With only 3% counted, Carol Moseley Braun declared the winner over Chicago businessman Rich Williamson. One of the most closely watched races is in Pennsylvania, and there's no winner here yet. Lynn Yackel, the first-time poll, is taking on longtime Republican incumbent Arlen Specter. Specter tagged with insensitivity in his questioning last year of Anita Hill in the Clarence Thomas case. It's still too close to call, dead even there. California could make history, becoming the first state this evening to send 2 women to the Senate. Representative Barbara Boxer's been struggling to hold off a surge by Reaganite Republican Bruce Hershenson. Former San Francisco Mayor Dianne Feinstein's having an easier time of it, though, in her race. She's heavily favored against Republican incumbent John Seymour. Results from the California races, though, are still about 2 hours away. Anti-incumbent fever apparently does not apply to the governors this year. Polls have closed in Rhode Island. And let's check if we have Rhode Island. 72-year-old Bruce Sunderland is up for re-election against Elizabeth Leonard, a car dealer there. Bruce Sunderland's been declared the winner there by our estimate. And incumbent governors are winning as well in Indiana, West Virginia, and in Vermont. 42 states and the District of Columbia are deciding on referenda, initiatives, and constitutional amendments. Maryland voters are approving an abortion rights measure. Our exit poll projects a measure to reinstate capital punishment in the nation's capital is being soundly rejected. 14 states have term limitations on the ballot. They're leading in early results from Michigan. Let's check numbers from Florida if we have them. We don't have them. It had been leading as well in Florida and in Ohio. Term limits we're talking about. Americans are still streaming into the polls in 10 states. They're voting in schools, churches, shopping malls, and even a garage. There are no public buildings in the affluent River Oaks district of Houston, so election officials opted to use the garage of the mayor, Bob Lanier's mansion. With Democratic Governor Bill Clinton taking a big early lead, let's go back to Lynn Russell with the rest of today's news. Lynn?
Thank you, Chuck. A 15-member presidential commission has recommended the repeal of laws that keep women in the military from serving at sea. The panel did recommend retaining the current ban on women serving aboard submarines and amphibious ships, and the commission pressed for the continued ban on women in both ground fighting and in aerial combat missions. A U.S. federal appeals court has handed the White House an Election Day defeat. It ruled today the Bush administration may not enforce its rule against discussion of abortion at federally funded family planning clinics. The rule had prevented all medical personnel except doctors from discussing it with patients. The appeals court says the government adopted the controversial rule without giving the public ample opportunity to challenge it. Basketball superstar Earvin Magic Johnson's decision to hang up his Los Angeles Lakers uniform again has angered many fans and AIDS activists. That story from Robert Vito.
Magic Johnson, there have been few players like him, always delivering with an incredible capacity to bounce back. But the controversy over his HIV infection drove him to quit the Lakers. Age groups across the country were outraged.
If Magic Johnson were to cut his head and have blood gushing out, and he were to fall against your head, which was also cut and had a big open wound so that the blood was able to gush in, well, yes, there's a risk there.
This is what worried more than a handful of players who competed against Magic. Fear that an injury to him could infect them. Some who have been outspoken about their concerns said they were glad to see him go.
The only thing I got to say is if you have the virus, I think it's definitely no place to be on a basketball court.
At a previously scheduled luncheon, the Lakers tried to show a happy face. But clearly they have plenty of problems without the Johnson Magic. One of them, some unhappy fans who bought season tickets just to see Magic play want their money back.
There are no refunds, and our reasoning is that if we, to give refunds would be tantamount to our guaranteeing the appearance of players, and we can't do that.
Magic Johnson says he'll now devote a lot of his time to AIDS awareness. The Los Angeles Lakers will be devoting a lot of their time to the unlikely task of finding a replacement for Magic Johnson. Robert Vito, CNN, Los Angeles.
The chairman of the House Banking Committee says the CIA knew 2 years ago the headquarters of an Italian bank was involved in illegal loans to Iraq. The manager of the bank's branch in Atlanta is charged with acting on his own to funnel $5.5 billion to Saddam Hussein. The Justice Department maintains it never knew of any complicity by bankers in Rome. Yugoslavia's prime minister barely held on to his job today. In an 18-17 vote, the upper house of the Yugoslavian parliament voted to let Milan Panic stay in office. That overrides yesterday's no-confidence vote on the lower house. Many lawmakers oppose Panic's willingness to use concessions to end the war in Bosnia-Herzegovina. Meanwhile, dozens of refugees from the Bosnian city of Jacha continue their trek to safety. Some of them arrived in villages south of their hometown today. But despite the pleas of the United Nations, Croatia turned back about 4,000 people. Croatia's president says the republic already is swamped with refugees. A few skirmishes have been reported in North Ossetia since Russian President Boris Yeltsin declared a state of emergency. The first serious outbreak of ethnic fighting on Russian soil began Friday. 26 people have been killed. Ingush militants are demanding control over part of North Ossetia from which they were expelled during World War II. North Ossetian leaders are meeting in Moscow today with President Yeltsin. A spokesman at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles says the tumor removed from actress Audrey Hepburn's colon Sunday was cancerous, but surgeons believe they removed all of the malignant tissue. She's expected to be released in a week. 63-year-old Hepburn, who starred in such films as Breakfast at Tiffany's and My Fair Lady, also is a Goodwill ambassador for UNICEF. Coming up, headline business news.
Checking Wednesday's weather. Rain forecast along the east and Gulf coasts. Showers also in the northeast and northwest. Snow is expected from West Texas through the Dakotas and the Great Lakes.
This is CNN Headline News. If your business relies on 800 service, you may think of your phone line as your lifeline. So choosing AT&T 800 service is important. With another carrier, you could lose more 800 calls day in and day out, and they're twice as likely to have an outage. But relax. With AT&T, the most reliable 800 service, you can get more 800 sales and a healthier bottom line.
I hope the governor, people say that the governor...
All right. Coup. 10.
Just word.
Surveys.
They're being whipped up by...
Some kind of estimate. How many people...
Is light under a bushel. I think as the months wore on, especially the last few weeks, he really got into this thing. I think Perot is going to be a factor on the national scene. I think that protest vote is going to be around for some time to come, no matter how big any victory of tonight. I think whoever governs for the next 4 years is going to have a very tough time of it, which means, in fact, that protest voters like Paul, from whom we just heard, are going to remain a powerful voice in American politics.
And also, to add to that, I also believe that Mr. Perot may officially form the third party. And if he does, and if he finds himself a good running mate and learns how to be a politician, not like the politicians, but to become a politician.
He has to compromise a little,
right.
Which he seems to have been unwilling to do.
He was unwilling to do. That was shown by Ed Rawlings' departure. Perot wanted to have it Perot's way. And that was one of his Achilles heel.
But it was also his greatest weakness.
It was his Achilles heel in the election, during the election process.
Let me ask you about some of the change we can expect, however the election goes. One call that has been heard around the country, and several states are voting on this, is term limits. And yet in, I see already 11 Senate races, the incumbent is winning, including Ohio, where John Glenn was thought very vulnerable for the connection with the Keating 5 scandal, and yet he's already been projected as the winner. So people say they want change, but don't change my guy.
I think it will change. I think it is something that is definitely on the voters' mind. I think what many voters have said, they see people like John Glenn, who went up in orbit, as something like an institution. And I think when it really boils down to it and it's put on the ballot, that I think most Americans that I've talked to, and I think most Americans in polls, are definitely in favor of term limits, because there are term limits on the presidency. You can only serve 2 terms, so why not have it in the Congress and the U.S. Senate?
Well, in any case, term limits are an experiment whose time has come. We don't know what the consequences of term limits are going to be. We're going to have to wait probably a decade or 2 before we have any idea.
But if ever there was a year where people had an excuse or a reason to throw out the incumbent, this is it. So you're basically telling people you can't be trusted to do what you should do, so we're going to put some limits on it. We'll be back. We will continue this discussion and also continue to take your phone calls, 1-800-752-CNBC. Stay with us on this election night, 1992.
Steve Jones joined CompuServe because a friend recommended it. He bought his digital deck for the same reason. And it was well reviewed by an expert on the electronics forum. So when Steve added surround sound, he got good advice and a great price right online. With CompuServe, there was always more. Like conferencing cross-country with someone whose system seemed a lot like his. They compared notes. Then Steve checked out airfares and flight schedules. There's only one way to judge an audio system. CompuServe. For more information, call 1-800-554-4046. Start with the basics, news, travel, and encyclopedia, and more for just $7.95 a month. Then go beyond for free software and help with hardware and software problems. You'll get more out of your computer and more out of life. CompuServe, the information service you won't outgrow.
You know where I'm going tomorrow?
Where?
I'm flying all the way to Asia.
Can my plane fly there?
Well, maybe if you throw it real hard, it just might.
When you have business on the other side of the world, choose the airline that just cut up to 3 hours off your travel time to cities throughout Asia. With service to more Asian cities than any other U.S. airline, Northwest Airlines, the leading airline to Asia. Some people just know how to fly.
Madison, you should have seen me at this meeting. I was cool, I was confident, I had everything they wanted before they could ask for it. Research, no problem. The analysis, the projections, never looked better. Madison, oh, you should have been there.
Cambridge Businesswear keeps you organized, together, and always looking your best in business.
You and me, kid, we're going places, huh?
Cambridge Businesswear, as important to the way you look as the clothes you wear.
Precisely at a time when investors need reduced costs and increased convenience, full commission brokers are finding more and more ways to charge more and more fees. Full commissions for trading, fees for not trading, annual fees of up to $100. But Charles Schwab has been charging less for years and offering accounts with no annual fees at all. We help you save up to 76% on commissions compared to full commission brokers, making the same investments you're making now. Now, when you can save that much by making your own investment decisions and avoid so many fees,
maybe it's time to come to Schwab.
Call 1-800-551-9551 for more information about how Charles Schwab can help you. It's time to call 1-800-551-9551 because it's time to come to Schwab.
Tomorrow night on The Real Story, Judy Mann from the Washington Post and syndicated columnist Cal Thomas will join us for some post-election analysis. And of course, we will hear from you, the voters, on tonight's results. So join us here tomorrow night on The Real Story. And tonight we are discussing the election results as they are still coming in with presidential scholar Barbara Kellerman and political insider Armstrong Williams. Welcome back to The Real Story. Right now, NBC is projecting 238 electoral votes already in the camp of Bill Clinton, 46 for President Bush. He just picked up Virginia, according to NBC. And also on the phone right now, we have Virginia with us from Wisconsin. Virginia, do you have a comment?
I'm a senior citizen, and I voted for Clinton. And I'm hoping that he'll be able to turn the economy around.
Was that the major issue for you, Virginia, the economy?
That and the Social Security Fund, because I would like to see that there for my children and my grandchildren.
And you felt that Clinton had the message that you were most comfortable with on those issues? All right, thank you. Were there segments of the population that one candidate did better with, do you think, Armstrong? Senior citizens? Did Bill Clinton do better, or is this an exception?
Well, you know, I think they both did fairly well with senior citizens. I think the difference is that Governor Clinton did very well with the MTV crowd, the younger group, the crowd that normally goes to the Republicans, starting with Ronald Reagan. I think President Bush lost that group.
I was seeing some numbers on young people, and ever since they gave the 18-year-old the right to vote in, what was that, 1972, the voting has been going down, the total vote.
But that's going to be reversed, I think. I think this year it's going to be reversed. By the way, I think, Armstrong, it is my understanding that, in fact, senior citizens are going for Clinton, particularly because of the issue of health care. I also think African Americans will tend to go more for the Democrats and the Republicans, which, of course, is traditional. And I think women. We know that there's a gender gap with regard to Republicans and Democrats on issues relating to women.
It was called the Year of the Woman because of the number of female candidates.
Right.
We're not sure that they're going to win in perhaps the numbers in which they ran. Certainly not going to win in that number. But is it the Year of the Woman as far as their vote on the president? Are they going to be a deciding?
Well, there's been a gender gap for years. So this year, it's simply going to be possibly gravy added to Bill Clinton's victory, if that's the way it turns out to be. There's no doubt that women have a major role.
Heart attack over here.
I'm not agreeing with Barbara on this one.
Well, that's okay.
I'm not agreeing.
You think the Republican message is just as good for women?
Oh, it's look at Hln Spector in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I'm
he will
looking at
probably
him.
win.
He's 2%. He's 2 points behind right now
I
in
think
his
he will
congressional
win,
race.
but it's not because, I mean, he has a very good record with women, and I think most women will vote for him. But I think the year of the woman will sort of just fade away because many of them are single-issue candidates. Well, and when they really get into the Congress and they have to deal with
But it's a larger issue. Is the party speaking to things that are important to women?
Very much so. I mean, look at Bush's administration, his cabinet. Yes.
Okay, well, let's go to a woman on the line now. Margaret, in Atlanta, what do you think? Do Republicans speak to you?
I am a Republican.
Well, then I guess they're speaking to you.
Yes, and I am scared to death when I see that going for Clinton. That scares me to death because I am a retired senior citizen, and I see my Social Security just fading away with a Democrat in there.
So it wouldn't matter who it is. You just think the Democrats are not going to take care of the Social Security.
Well, I don't like Clinton at all.
Okay.
I have two grandchildren, and their future is ahead of them. Mine is behind me, you might
All right,
say.
Margaret, thank you for that call, and that brings us to the important question. What happens beginning tomorrow if Bill Clinton is elected?
Bill Clinton, voice croaky or not, has no choice but to hit the ground running. Unfortunately, the days when you can take a couple of weeks off and rest and take a tan in the sun, forget it. He has his work cut out for him. The effectiveness of the transition will depend on his capacity to get his act together with regard to a few key policy items.
All right, let's
not
do the
too
key policy
big
items.
an agenda.
Taxes. Are taxes going up?
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Unfortunately.
Health care. He's promised universal health care. Will we get some kind of plan before Congress in the first 100 days?
Yes.
No.
He's not even going to
yes,
put a
yes,
plan
yes.
out? No. He promised a plan.
It's going to be high on Clinton's policy
It's
agenda,
easy.
one or another kind of health care reform.
But is he going to put it out there?
It's easy to give rhetoric. Okay, we're still dealing with a politician here. He may put it out there, but the issue is, will it take effect, and will it put something in place to address the issues that he's discussed as it relates to health care that so many people supported him on? And I will say no.
Okay. Welfare reform. Are we gonna,
that's not an
is
issue.
anybody going to tackle that? They talked about it on both
need,
sides.
Let me just say this. They need to abolish it or reform it. I just hope that if Governor Clinton does go ahead and win the presidency, I just hope that they do not give us more big government and welfare, because people really need to learn how to do for themselves. You can give them a leg up, but not a permanent hand out.
Okay, the inner cities was
the-
a big concern early on with the Los Angeles riots.
No one-
Disappeared
no one
from the
addressed
campaign.
The inner
No one
cities,
addressed
poverty, crime, race, these are issues that none of the three candidates, and Armstrong, I think we do agree on
Agreed.
this.
No one addressed
None
it.
of the three candidates
Some of it is,
addressed
Bill
that.
Clinton may have been afraid to. President Bush certainly didn't address it in his 4
Why
years.
would the governor be a Clinton? Since she said eloquently he is the champion for African Americans, why would he be afraid to address something that is of concern to them?
There seemed to be a fear of losing once he got ahead.
Fear? He cares about the people. He stands for what he believes in.
Well, that's what I want to know. Will he say more now if he wins than he said before he got elected?
As long as it doesn't offend those moderately conservative white voters who put him in office.
He is known in Arkansas as the great compromiser. Bill Clinton loves to be loved. He needs to be liked, and it remains to be seen whether he can transcend those needs and take action on the hard issues that need to be addressed.
Well, and Governor Clinton, let me add, has made so many promises. He is so auctioned out, and he made so many promises until
It could be a very active first 100 days.
Right. I like to see him keep some of those
All right,
promises
Barbara
he's
Keller
made.
and Armstrong Williams, thank you very much for joining us
Thank
again.
you.
If you haven't heard, the electoral vote total as projected by NBC, 238 to 46 for President Bush as of this moment. That does it for this edition of The Real Story. I'm Boyd Mattson. Phil Donahue, Vladimir Posner are here in this studio next, continuing to take your phone calls and give you election results. Bye-bye.
And now for an election night update, CNBC's Sue Herrera.
Good evening. So far, Governor Clinton is the projected winner of 248 electoral votes compared to just 46 for President Bush. Here's a look at some of the projections tonight. Mr. Clinton has captured many of the key battleground states, including New York, Colorado, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Illinois, as well as Connecticut and Maine, two of President Bush's home states. President Bush at this time is the projected winner in Oklahoma, Indiana, South Carolina, Nebraska, and Virginia. And history has already been made this election year. In Illinois, Democrat Carol Moseley Braun is projected to be the first black female ever elected to the U.S. Senate. She's a Democrat. An early look at how the markets are reacting after opening slightly lower. The Nikkei average finished the morning session only about 48.5 points to the downside.
Which clamp is faster?
An old-fashioned screw-type clamp.
Or the revolutionary quick-grip bar clamp?
Let's watch closely.
Here they go!
And it's over! Amazing!
Oh.
Now for the instant replay.
Hey, look at that! One finger on the quick-release trigger and the bar slides right into position.
And there, he's tightening the clamp by merely squeezing the quick-grip handle. And it's done! You know, unlocking the clamp again was a very nice touch.
The quick-grip bar clamp, available wherever quality tools are sold.
帮助您开发和赢得国外市场，使您在竞争中占有利地位。
Nous vous accorderons un crédit d'un mois d'appel jusqu'à $2,000 lorsque vous changez à AT&T.
Of course, when you switch, we'll reimburse up to $5 per line change and waive new service order charges.
The extended forecast.
Years ago, I won the heavyweight championship. I beat everybody they put in front of me. Next, I'm going to fight Grady Bull. This is the fight I won. He say he's going to be the next champ. I say it's just going to be next.
Budweiser presents Holyfield versus Bo, heavyweight championship fight November 13th, the Mirage, Las Vegas.
CNN Headline News, I'm Lynn Russell. The long and grueling campaign season is in its final hours now, and while voters in the West are still casting their ballots, Bill Clinton, George Bush, Ross Perot are closely watching the numbers from those states where the polls already have closed. Chuck Roberts is standing by with the latest tally. Chuck?
We're watching him closely too, Lynn. Thanks. The numbers from exit polls and the actual vote count are certainly creeping Bill Clinton's way right now, though mathematically it's still too soon to declare a winner. Right now, the polls are closed in 40 states. Here's how the numbers look. Clinton has 238 electoral votes. He only needs 270 to capture this presidential election. George Bush has won 46. Ross Perot has yet to win a single electoral vote. On the map, here are the states that Bush and Clinton have won. Again, Perot hasn't won any. Bush has won Virginia. That's the latest call for him. South Carolina, Indiana, Oklahoma, and Nebraska. And Clinton has won all of New England. And the big populated states, Michigan, Missouri, New York, Pennsylvania, and as you see, Georgia as well. And again, the presidential popular vote total with 15% counted shows Bill Clinton a 2 percentage point lead now over President Bush, with Ross Perot at 16%. Looking at state-by-state numbers, results from the second biggest electoral prize. It used to be the biggest. New York are in. It has been a Clinton winner. Bill Clinton has won that. The poll closed about 30 minutes ago in New York. 33 electoral votes there. Clinton is leading in Texas. The polls have been closed an hour and a half there. Clinton is leading right now. Actually, Clinton is losing right now to Bush, 42 to 39%, 19% counted, though the exit polling shows Clinton ahead. But in the popular count, Bush is ahead right now. Let's check the Florida results. Polls have been closed quite a while there. Bush in front by a scant 1 percentage point. The Georgia race has already been decided. Bill Clinton has been declared the winner there with 13 electoral votes. In Virginia, we just told you President Bush has won that with also 13 electoral votes. New Jersey, which hasn't voted Republican since 1964, will vote Democratic this time. Bill Clinton has won New Jersey, and it's 15 votes. Ohio, which had been a battleground state, is still too close to call, though President Bush is leading there by only 1 percentage point. And Illinois, a state where the polls have been closed 90 minutes, Bill Clinton has won that easily tonight, 22 electoral votes in Illinois.
interesting trends developing from the exit polling. For example, voters considered Reagan Democrats are coming back into the fold and voting for Clinton 2-1 over Bush. Clinton's also the choice of twice as many first-time voters. And finally, more people thought Bill Clinton was more honest during the campaign regarding his draft record than was the president regarding the Iran-Contra scandal. Bill Clinton's trying to savor what could be his last few hours as a governor. He went for a jog through Little Rock with his daughter Chelsea, then settled back for an afternoon movie and nap. He's been joined there by running mate Al Gore, and the duo are now watching the results trickle in. A Clinton advisor says his man came so far by keeping his mind and message on the task at hand.
I got to tell you, he started this race with a crystal clear vision of change for the middle class, focused on the economy. And those few times when we got distracted from that, when we got punished by the voters. And as soon as we got back to that original message, we went back up.
Ross Perot's Dallas mansion is said to be upbeat and festive. Perot's son-in-law just emerged from dinner there and says no one except him was watching the returns on television. He also said he thinks his famous father-in-law has unleashed a powerful force.
It's very unlikely that the fire that's been lit will die. I think that when people realize the power they can have over their elected officials, the watchdog effect they can have over them, that won't stop. I think it will continue.
President Bush, referring to all those numbers we've been reporting, says exit polls don't vote, people vote. But nonetheless, when asked how he's doing, he replied, "I've been better, I've been happier." Skip Loescher standing by live at the Bush headquarters in Houston. What's the mood down there, Skip?
Chuck, the music has gotten louder as the evening has droned on and the painful reality has set into the Republicans gathered in Houston. The reality that apparently at this point the tide is coming in and maybe washing away any hopes the president has had for another 4 years at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. The music here has been upbeat, the mood not somber, but it is clear to most of those who gathered here that this is not probably going to be the greatest upset in the history of presidential politics, as President Bush had predicted. As for Mr. Bush himself, he admitted tonight that I've been better, I've been happier, and he is scheduled to show up here sometime within the next half hour to deliver a statement. The way things are going, Chuck, it is hard to believe that that statement could be anything but a concession speech. Skip Loescher, CNN, reporting live from Houston. Chuck?
Thanks, Skip. We'll check in with you later. Democratic vice presidential nominee Al Gore is with Bill Clinton in Little Rock, as we said, monitoring the election results. The Tennessee senator voted earlier in his hometown of Carthage. He said he's excited and has a good feeling about this night. Vice President Dan Quayle got in a game of hoops today after voting. He's waiting out results in his hometown of Huntington and said he's sure it will be a fairly long night. There are 35 Senate races this evening. So far, the incumbents are largely holding their own, a few notable exceptions. One of the tightest contests is in New York State. Attorney General Robert Abrams is challenging Republican Alphonse D'Amato, who's been plagued by ethics questions. D'Amato in the early going and the raw vote has a slight edge right now, 55-40. That's not a slight edge, that's a 10-point edge. But the exit polls show the two dead even, so this race is still way too close. Pennsylvania, another close one. Democratic challenger Lynn Yackel giving Arlen Specter a run for his money. We mean literally. Specter outspent Yackel 2-1, but Yackel struck a rich vein of voters by hammering Specter on his treatment of Anita Hill and the Clarence Thomas Supreme Court confirmation hearings. Yackel's on top in the early going. 43% counted in Pennsylvania, on top by 2. And here's the Illinois contest, women's outrage. Carol Mosley Braun has won the open seat. She, having defeated Alan Dixon in the primary, has defeated Rich Williamson in the general election and will be the new senator, the first black woman senator elected from Illinois. In Ohio, another scandal put incumbent Democrat John Glenn on the endangered list, but he has survived the Keating 5 fiasco, having edged out challenger Mike DeWine, the lieutenant governor. Yackel and Braun are just two in a record field of 11 women Senate candidates. So far, only one has lost. The GOP sole woman candidate, Charlene Harr, who is challenging Tom Daschle, the freshman senator in South Dakota. It could be the year of the woman twice over in California, which could make history, sending two to the Senate. Representative Barbara Boxer has been struggling to hold off a surge by Reaganite Republican Bruce Hershenson. Former San Francisco Mayor Dianne Feinstein's having an easier time in her race, heavily favored against Republican incumbent John Seymour. Those results will be in about 90 minutes. This year's anti-incumbent sentiment is being reflected in the term limitation movement. The issue is at large before voters in 14 states, and with 12% of the vote counted in Florida, the term limit measure is winning an overwhelming 75% support. With 9% of the ballots tallied in Ohio, the term limit issue is winning a runaway 68% there. Our exit polls project term limits will also prevail in Missouri, Michigan, and Arizona. Whether they'll be constitutionally upheld, that is, whether the courts will okay term limits, is another matter. Many citizens went the extra mile to vote today. In Dallas, a pregnant woman in labor stopped at her polling place on the way to the hospital. 100 people waiting to vote let the woman skip to the front. She's had her baby, and everybody's doing fine. So, early exit polls show Bill Clinton skipping ahead right now. Lynn Russell, back to you with the rest of today's headlines.
Thank you, Chuck. Other news this evening. A U.S. federal appeals court has handed the White House an Election Day defeat. It has ruled the Bush administration may not enforce its rule against discussion of abortion at federally funded family planning clinics. The rule had prevented all medical personnel except doctors from discussing it with patients. The appeals court says the government adopted the controversial rule without giving the public ample opportunity to challenge it. In an unprecedented move, a 15-member presidential commission has recommended the repeal of laws that keep women in the military from serving at sea. The commission did recommend retaining the current ban on women serving aboard submarines and amphibious ships. The commission also pressed for the continued ban on women in both ground fighting and in aerial combat missions.
Radio.
Has a vision. The problem is that he's been too good at it. His vision is for a certain kind of white man to get very rich at the expense of everyone else. And that's his vision. He's been much too successful at it. That's the problem. You know that's his vision. He doesn't care about anybody who's not rich and white.
Yeah. Is that about all you had on your mind here before you called us?
I got more if you want.
I bet you do. Let me say this.
Kozel for Secretary of Education.
Huh?
How about Jonathan Kozel for Secretary of Education?
You know what? I would.
He's got a point.
Yes, he does. He's got lots of points.
Yes,
I make no disparaging comment about the gentleman's insight here. He obviously is a politically thinking human being. Incidentally, I have to plead guilty to the issue of not chasing down the story of a black woman who didn't get the job in Arkansas.
But you can still do it, Phil.
It is alleged. Listen, my show's still on the air. It's not over. We've got this hour, this half hour every Tuesday and Thursday nights here on NBC. We're glad to.
And by the way, one more thing. I wish you'd have enough respect for your daytime audience to have somebody like Noam Chomsky on in the daytime when enough people can learn about him.
Yeah, I do thank you. And I hope you know that Noam Chomsky's been a guest of Posner.
I know, but you should have him on the daytime instead of the wrestlers and the bowlers.
Right. Rollins, Utah, you ought to have a show.
You should.
I'll host a show with you guys anytime you want.
Very good. I'm glad you called. Hang on just a second. We've got a chance to go to Houston. Sandy Gilmore, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Phil.
Very good. I can hear you as well. You are at Bush Quail headquarters in Houston.
That's correct. We're here at the Western Galleria Hotel in a very ritzy part of Houston. This is the hotel not where President Bush is staying, but where he will be coming a little later on this evening for what it's very clear now will be a concession speech.
Yeah. So the party's over. I mean, what have you got for us, Sandy? Who are you talking to, and is there any explanation for this? And is there one thing they're saying? Of course it was the economy. We know that. It was a tough uphill fight for any incumbent presidency under this condition, but what else is being said, Sandy?
Well, Phil, how about the media?
Oh, really?
Mary Madeline, we talked to her just a little while ago, just as the bad news was about to break. She said the media, the media has been portraying this all along as Bush losing, and this is a big factor. I think you're going to hear this from Republicans after the race is over tonight.
Yeah, but Sandy, this is Vladimir Posner talking to you. I wonder how you assess that. Do you really think the media has played that role, this destructive role, in giving the election to Clinton? I mean, do you buy into that kind of view?
Well, I don't buy into it. Of course, our viewers have to realize I'm biased. I mean, I've been a reporter for 25 years, and so I don't think so. But we have certainly been reporting the economic bad news. We have certainly been reporting what Bush has and has not, and mostly has not been doing about the economy and about many domestic issues that concern Americans. We reported about what Pat Buchanan was saying about President Bush back in New Hampshire. And, Republicans don't like that.
Yeah, well, that's true. But, I mean, don't you think that if Clinton were to lose, the Republicans would certainly forget about the role of the media? I mean, it's just one of those things. It's an excuse for what's happening. Don't you believe that?
I believe that. Yeah. The main point here is that it is the economy, and people are hurting. We go back to New Hampshire once again. Remember, President Bush went there. He he seemed not to have a feel for what people were going through there. Even Pat Buchanan, to his right, was bashing him on that. Then Bush reads the cue card, message, I care. And it went downhill for Bush from that point on.
Sandy, we do thank you and hope you'll be able to check back with us as you report on a place in America today, a hotel ballroom, where it does appear the party's over.
We just very, very quickly, Phil and Vladimir, we did have a quote from President Bush. I don't know if you picked that up. An NBC reporter reached him by telephone at his hotel on the other part of town. President Bush said, and I quote, "It doesn't look too good. I've seen better."
Wow. Sandy, thanks very much, and please, we'll be on the air for about an hour and a half, so we'll look for you later. I do thank you. Quakertown, PA, hi, I'm glad you waited. Are you there?
Yes. Just like to say that I am a registered Republican, and everyone in my family of voting age is registered Republican, and we're very disappointed the way the media handled the campaign and projection of Mr. Clinton as a presidential winner before it's even over. And I'd like to say that if Mr. Clinton does become the winner, what are people in the Pentagon going to think of Mr. Clinton? And our personal opinion, Mr. Clinton is a draft dodger, and he doesn't even have qualifications for international politics. And
yeah.
Quakertown, excuse me, Quakertown, you would admit, though, that if Mr. Clinton is elected, he is elected by the American people, and therefore the majority of Americans don't agree with your view. I mean, you would accept that, would you not?
Yes, but that's true, but the majority of Americans are not very bright, and they can't ultimately see that 4 years from now there isn't going to be any economic improvements in the United States.
But they were very bright 4 years ago when they elected Bush over anyone else. Then they were bright, now they've become stupid. Is that the idea?
Well, as far as I can see, Mr. Bush handled it the best way with the conditions that he had. And what would Mr. Clinton do in a situation like Desert Storm?
Well, I hope there isn't one, but if there is, we'll definitely see.
Yeah.
He might take us beyond that point.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I do thank you, Quakertown. There is real anger and disappointment in the man's voice, and we can speculate that he speaks for millions of people who voted for Bush.
There's
and
no doubt
millions
about
of
it.
people did.
No doubt
Stanford, Connecticut, hi.
Hi, Phil. I just want to comment that the gay population has been totally alienated in this election, and that I don't think ever before the gay population ever blocked its vote like they have in this election for Bill Clinton.
Why do you say alienated when you know, it certainly took long enough, and nobody should be thrilled at it, but at least encouraged by the fact that we had a major presidential candidate who solicited and rejoiced in the support of the gay community and spoke out loud.
That's why he got their votes. What do you think?
But absolutely. Clinton is wonderful for that, but it's abhorrent how George Bush addressed the AIDS issue. It's an issue that's going to affect the rest of the American population in the next few years. Parents who have teenagers should be scared to death by this, and I just can't believe more isn't being addressed. And I think the way that President Bush handled it in the debate was just very condescending. He talked as if the gay people are just some sort of lepers that have descended upon this country, and that you know, he's talking about how much he's spending versus cancer patients, as if he's doing something.
Your point is made, Stanford. I don't want to rush you, but I am down to the computer here on seconds, and we do have to break. Are you there, Slidell, Louisiana?
Yeah.
Hang on 1 second. We'll get to you when Posner and Donahue continues on CNBC in just a moment.
Until now, some thought imported luxury sedans possessed a higher level of engineering. But change is on the horizon. Introducing the 1993 Cadillac Seville STS with the North Star system. At its heart, a 295 horsepower North Star V8. So advanced, its first scheduled tune-up is 100,000 miles. The Cadillac Seville STS with the North Star system. Changing the way you think about American automobiles.
presenting the RCA 52-inch projection screen home theater. It's bigger and brighter than almost anything out there.
You know where I'm going tomorrow?
Where?
I'm flying all the way to Asia.
Can my plane fly there?
Well, maybe if you throw it real hard, it just might.
When you have business on the other side of the world, choose the airline that just cut up to 3 hours off your travel time to cities throughout Asia. With service to more Asian cities than any other U.S. airline, Northwest Airlines, the leading airline to Asia. Some people just know how to fly.
Finally, a chance to get away. Moments like this call for Gold MasterCard.
We could find a romantic hotel.
In Paris? It has the added credit you've earned.
We could sneak off to the beach.
Yeah, Maui. Plus, no card is accepted in more places at home and abroad.
Or we could take a trip we'll all remember.
Wow!
Gold MasterCard, the best gold card to master the moment.
Some full commission brokers are finding more and more ways to charge more and more fees, even annual fees on IRAs, just for the privilege of doing business with them. But not us. At Charles Schwab, we offer the no-fee IRA, and we guarantee that you'll never pay an annual fee for the rest of your life. So if you're tired of finding new fees every time you open your statement,
maybe it's time to come to Schwab.
Don't wait for a dental emergency to happen. Get DenTemp today and be prepared. Caps and crowns can loosen unexpectedly and cause embarrassment. Fillings can fall out and cause pain and discomfort. DenTemp was developed by a dentist to temporarily replace loose caps and lost fillings until you can see your dentist. DenTemp helps you avoid unnecessary pain, helps eliminate embarrassment. Don't suffer needlessly. Get DenTemp today. Call now for more information and money-saving coupons.
This is Clinton. That's a live shot of Clinton. This is Little Rock. That's obviously outside. There is not a hotel room left in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Bush 46 projected, so Clinton needs 22 electoral votes to become officially the President of the United States.
And with the West not in,
California pretty much decided, and that's 54 electoral votes. He's over the top. He's over 300 votes.
Slidell, Louisiana, I'm glad you waited. Hello.
Yeah, good evening. I just want to make a comment on the presidential elections I've been watching on TV. It's unfortunate that President Bush is in the minority, but he brought this all upon himself in the fact that he disregarded the American public. What I'm saying is this: he was too interested in foreign affairs. What about the American public like myself? I got laid off. I'm now earning 20% of what I did 2 years ago. What about me? How am I going to get a job? How is the national debt going to be paid down?
Yeah, Slidell, what did you do? What was the work you did before you got laid off?
Engineering.
Engineering like?
Industrial. Industrial engineering. For an aerospace company.
And you were supportive of Bush before this happened to you? You were a Republican kind of voter?
Yes, I was.
You were.
Does the engineering work that you do create a product that is defense related?
My engineering experience is also defense and also commercial. Either way you want to look at it, but the whole thing is this: they have taken the manufacturing jobs and they have moved them out of this country. Now, regardless of what you want to say, manufacturing used to be made up of 46% of the workforce. Today it is 16%, because all the jobs have gone to foreign countries. They've gone to Mexico, they've gone to Taiwan, they've gone to Japan, and et cetera, and et cetera, and et cetera.
Do you really think that that's President Bush's fault or the fault of the companies that just find it much more lucrative to go to these other countries where labor is much cheaper and where they can make a lot more money? Why do you place that particular situation at the president's doorstep? I just wonder how you...
I feel it's both, because the American government condones the American corporations going overseas, and they do not impose any type of tariffs to bring the merchandise back into this country.
Right. Slidell, I don't want to...
Public television. You'll find TV worth watching here on Iowa Public Television, a resource for Iowa's future.
They are graveyards of monumental proportion. They have amazed people for centuries. But no one is really sure how these massive structures were built until now. Nova travels to Egypt to test various theories and actually build a pyramid. The catch? They can only use tools available in ancient Egypt. Explore the mysteries within this old pyramid.
Tune in to Iowa Public Television Wednesday at 7.
Good evening, I'm Tom Bearden. This is the latest PBS election update. At this hour, the polls have closed in 37 states and the District of Columbia, and based on network projections, it seems to be shaping up as a big night for Bill Clinton. Here are our national projections of states, and 24 states are now in Bill Clinton's column to 5 in George Bush's column. Here's how the popular vote is looking in some of the states where the polls have closed. In New York, an important state for Mr. Bush and Mr. Clinton, Mr. Clinton is the projected winner with 45% of the vote to George Bush's 38% of the vote, with 12% of the precincts reporting. In Wisconsin, 8% of the precincts are reporting. The race still too close to call. Clinton leading with 46% of the popular vote, and George Bush has 36%, Ross Perot 18%. In Minnesota, the projected winner based on exit polling is Bill Clinton with 53% of the popular vote recorded so far, only 6% of the precincts reporting. George Bush with 27% and Ross Perot with 20%. Louisiana has 36% of its precincts reporting. Bill Clinton with 46% of those voted, and George Bush 41%, Ross Perot 13%. In Colorado, a very small total of votes reported so far. However, exit polling shows Bill Clinton to take Colorado. 54% of the votes recorded so far to George Bush's 32%. Ross Perot had been expected to do better than 14%. 25% of the precincts reporting in New Mexico. Exit polls and network projections show Clinton the winner in New Mexico, 41% to George Bush's also 41%, Ross Perot 18%. In Florida, an important state for the president, 27% of the precincts are reporting at this hour. Bush with a slim lead, 41% to Clinton's 40%, Perot's 19%. In Texas, the president's home state, he has a slim lead, 41% to 39% over Clinton, Perot with 20% of the vote. Based on network projections, this is how the electoral vote currently stands. 270 electoral votes are needed to win. Bill Clinton is very close to that total at this hour with 247 electoral votes recorded. George Bush with 46. Ross Perot has yet to gain a single electoral vote. There are also some key battles going on in the U.S. Senate. Democrats now control the Senate by a 57 to 43 margin, but with 35 seats up for grabs, that ratio is likely to change. We have some results in some closely watched contests around the country. In Illinois, with 16% of the precincts reporting, exit polls project Carol Moseley Braun, the Democrat, to the winner over Richard Williamson, 54% to 46%. In Pennsylvania, we have 55% of the precincts reporting. That race is too close to call, 51% to 49%, Lynn Yackel with a slim lead over Arlen Specter. In New York, 25% of the precincts reporting, and Alphonse D'Amato, the incumbent Republican, is ahead 55% to Robert Abrams, 45%. In Ohio, the projected winner is incumbent John Glenn, 54% of the vote recorded so far, 31% of the precincts reporting. He's leading Michael DeWine, the Republican, at 46% of the popular vote at this hour. In South Carolina, 60% of the precincts are reporting, and incumbent Democrat Ernest Hollings has 53% of the vote total thus far over Republican challenger Thomas Hartnett. He has 47% of the vote. In North Carolina, 49% of the precincts are reporting in the race between Locke Faircloth and incumbent Terry Sanford. Republican Faircloth is leading at this hour, 52% to Terry Sanford's 48%. In Indiana, the projected winner is Dan Coates over Joseph Hoxett, 58 to 42%. That concludes this election update. I'm Tom Bearden in New York.
This is PBS.
Good evening. I'm Lark McCarthy in New York with a Fox News election update. Bill Clinton is apparently pulling ahead of President Bush, at least when you look at the projected winners in the states. Network projection services now predict Bush has 46 electoral votes, Clinton 239. 270 are needed to win. 22 states are projected to go to Clinton. Bush has 5 states so far. The popular vote is much closer. Here are the latest results. With 25% of the precincts reporting, President Bush has 40% of the vote, Clinton 44%, Ross Perot trailing with about 17%. And proposals in some states to limit terms for members of Congress appear to be passing with strong numbers. So far, it looks like proposals will pass in Arkansas, Florida, Michigan, Missouri, Montana, and 3 other states. I'm Lark McCarthy, Fox News, New York.
It's back! It's back! It's back!
Yes, direct. Rental tapes and video discs, as well as available in amazing Dolby Pro Logic surround sound, designed to recreate the theater experience in the home. Audio Logic can set you up with this unique sound experience using some of your current equipment for less than you'd expect. Sounds so real, you'd think you were at the movies.
Except you won't have an annoying person talking through the whole movie.
For brands on the cutting edge, it's Audio Logic.
Take advantage now of rebates, 7% financing, and 5 years parts and labor free on American Standard high-efficiency heat pumps, add-on heat pumps, and furnaces. Call to ask about the American Standard heat. That is 2 machines in one. It heats and cools your home.
And also Alaska, we don't leave them out. That's at midnight.
Hands up. Takes a few seconds to help himself to your things.
The West
Universe
now to the app.
Chicago's very own 9 o'clock news.
Bill Clinton sprints to a big lead in the race for president. Good evening. I'm Rick Rosenthal.
And I'm Allison Payne, along with news analyst Joel Wiseman. And in the race for the U.S. Senate seat in Illinois, a big victory for Carol Moseley Braun.
Just some of the many races we'll be covering for you tonight. Let's take a look first at the presidential situation. We've got some numbers to share with you. President Bush trailing Bill Clinton in almost every state in which results are now beginning to come in from the East Coast and here in the Midwest, and polls are closing now in the mountain states as well. With about a little over a quarter of the precincts reporting nationwide now, this is the popular vote. Bill Clinton out in front by just 4 percentage points over the incumbent president. Ross Perot down in 17%. But of course, as you know, the popular vote is not the key. Rather, it is the electoral vote. Magic number for either of the candidates, Bill Clinton, George Bush, or Ross Perot, 270 needed in order to clinch the presidency, and Bill Clinton is very close. 247 states projected in his column, 247 electoral votes, I should say, those states colored in blue. President Bush picking up only 46 electoral votes, those states colored in red. Ross Perot picking up none. You may have noticed Illinois is in the Bill Clinton column. It has been projected that Illinois will go Democratic for the first time in 28 years, with about 1/5 of the precincts here in Illinois reporting Bill Clinton has a commanding lead over George Bush and Ross Perot. Allison?
And as we told you, Carol Moseley Braun should make history as the first African-American woman to go to the U.S. Senate. She is projected to win over Republican Rich Williamson 55 to 45. However, let's take a look at the actual number with 17% of the precincts reporting. Braun has 54% to Williamson's 46%. Joni Lum is standing by line at live at Braun headquarters, and she joins us now for this report. Joni.
Allison, Braun's press secretary had predicted that the race would be no closer than 10 points. It is a victory nonetheless, and they are very excited. This room is packed. They're getting ready for a big victory party. Carol Moseley Braun's supposed to take the podium any minute now, but in the meantime, David Axelrod, a political consultant, joins us now. Did you think that this would be as close as it is or closer?
Oh, I really expected a very close race. Closer, I think, than even the numbers that we're seeing now. In fact, I'm gratified by what I've seen today. I think that it's an incredible showing when you consider, looking at the exit polling, that half the white voters in this state, half the men in this state downstate, half the downstate voters in the state gave their votes to Carol Moseley Braun, and I think she really transcended the base she started with and built a coalition around economic issues that is very impressive, very, very important.
Our latest figures also show that 58% of Republican women threw their support to Braun. Is that greater or less than expected?
Well, I think that's an enormous number. I think that is better than we had hoped for, and certainly I think it's one of the many reasons that Rich Williamson fell short in this race. I think the main one being that he didn't have the message of change, and she did.
But since you did think it would be a lot closer, what do you think happened late in the day with some of these undecided voters?
I think what happened is they took a good look at these candidates and what they had to offer, and they saw in Carol Moseley Braun someone who would bring about change in Washington, fight for different economic policies, and Rich Williamson is more of the same old thing, and I think that that ultimately was the difference in the race.
So what she stuck to in the beginning brought her through to the end, it sounds like.
I think so, and I think she built on what she started with in the beginning, so I think this is a great historic night.
All right, thank you, David Axelrod, the political consultant for Carol Moseley Braun. We're expecting her to come down any moment, and when she does, we'll be back to you. Live at Braun headquarters, I'm Joni Lum. Back to you, Rick and Allison.
All right, thank you, Joni. Joel Wiseman joins us now, and Joel, you predicted this yesterday.
Well, there was a 10-point margin in the last tracking poll. Some people thought a lot of that was going to break toward Williamson among the undecided vote, but it turned out to break exactly proportional to what it was between these two candidates. Unlike what David Axelrod says, though, I don't think that she really did a lot of building. I think she did a lot of hanging on, and I think she clung to Bill Clinton's coattails, and as he got stronger and she got weaker, she was able to pull this out. It also was a victory not so much for Democrats or for minorities as it was for gender. Women absolutely came through for Carol Braun, and it crossed both party lines and it crossed geographic lines.
We're also seeing that people who didn't necessarily buy her story on the Medicaid issue still voted for her.
That's right, and particularly women who didn't buy her story on Medicaid voted for her.
Okay, Joel, we will be talking with you many times during the course of the evening. We'll be okay, we won't. We'll continue to talk to Joel.
Why not? You're right. You're going to keep talking.
Let us tell a trade secret. Our producer is talking to us in our respective ears and saying, do this or do that, depending on what is happening out in the street at their various candidates' headquarters. And we were about to go to Carol Moseley Braun, or actually Clinton headquarters, I think it was, but that's not going to work for the moment. So we'll just keep kicking it around here with Joel.
There's a lot more to say on that Senate race, Rick. And this was also a victory for Carol Moseley Braun's personality. Aside from the issues, she was a more likable candidate, if not necessarily a more believable candidate than Rich Williamson.
Well, he came up with this issue, though, this Medicaid issue that just all of a sudden happened, and Rich Williamson made some political hay.
There's no question he made inroads.
There were inroads, but I just don't think he had the time to do what he needed to do in the time that was left.
And also, a lot of voters didn't like his particular style with this kind of whispering and excessive hand gesturing, and he wasn't the alternative that could have totally capitalized. He capitalized somewhat.
I've also heard some members of the media criticize themselves, saying that we didn't cover this race well because we all got kind of caught off guard, and she had such a honeymoon with the press and everyone else, and we didn't.
Yeah, early on, she was not
give
pressed.
It all we could have.
She was not pressed for issues as early as she should have been. And there was some controversy in some of the issues that she laid out. For instance, she wanted a bigger defense cut than Bill Clinton and was a little more left of him. But we were infatuated with the victory scenario and the history of it all. And then later on, the press was very tough on her.
Okay, let's take another shot at Clinton headquarters. Roseanne Taya is standing by live down there, and I think probably, Roseanne, you're finding yourself in the middle of a pretty happy bunch of folks.
Well, Rick and Allison, whether he's a declared winner or not tonight, they are celebrating a victory here and saying that a Clinton victory can only mean good things for Illinois. A lot of thank yous went out to the volunteers tonight and some encouraging words from Mayor Daley.
This is a great day in Illinois and the country. The people have spoken for change, change for a job, change for education, health, uniting people instead of dividing people. The Reagan-Bush era is over with. The people have spoken. They want a change. They want a commitment to make our country better now and in the future. They're sick and tired of the bureaucracy in Washington. They're sick and tired of the gridlock. We have a leader that will lead this country to a better society. Bill Clinton and Al Gore provide the leadership that is necessary to make cities important in this country and not forgotten. Carol Moseley Braun will bring common sense into the Senate and to get things done in the Senate. We unite behind a great leader who had the courage and determination when he decided to run for president to go through the primaries. In the selection of Al Gore made a difference. In the convention uniting, and with people like you, the volunteers, the young people, made a difference. You have rekindled the spirit in America about politics and government. As Bill Clinton said, he has a covenant. He has a covenant with you to make a difference, and we know he will. Thank you.
Well, the chairman of the state Democratic Party, Gary LaPelle, said tonight that now when our mayor calls the White House, he's going to have a friend there. But he said there's not only a personal connection at work here, but also a commitment from Clinton camp, a commitment to rebuilding our nation's cities and to infrastructure changes and improvements. So right now, they're just waiting to make it official, but as you can see, they're already celebrating. Reporting live from Hilton Towers, I'm Roseanne Tejas. Back to you, Rick and Allison.
Okay, Roseanne, thanks. A happy crowd down there at Clinton headquarters downtown. Clinton carrying the state of Illinois and our 22 electoral votes. We have an update now on the electoral vote situation because that, of course, is the final tally that really counts in this election. Bill Clinton has moved up now a notch to 254 of the 270 electoral votes that he needs. He has either been declared or projected the winner in all of the states on our map that you see colored blue. President Bush, 55 electoral votes, and only those 7 states that are colored in red are now in his column. Ross Perot, the independent candidate, shook up this election campaign, Joel Wiseman, but isn't doing very well either in the popular vote or the electoral vote. He's doing about as well in the popular vote as the polls had expected, around 14, 15, 16%, but no electoral votes.
Right, and we don't know yet how big a factor he is in pushing states toward Bush or toward Clinton. In Illinois, though, Clinton deserves all the credit in the world. He did a great job of organizing.
Well-run campaign coast to coast and border to border, not only here in Illinois.
But he finished it off in Illinois very early. I mean, this state was in the bag probably 3 or 4 weeks ago for Clinton, maybe even earlier than that. And the guy who was just on our screen talking about how the Bush-Reagan era is over, Mayor Daley really was the one who ran his campaign because he gave all of his own operatives to Clinton, and he gave them to him very early, including his brother.
Does this bode well for the city of Chicago and a Clinton administration?
I think it absolutely bodes well for the city of Chicago, and a lot of Chicago Democrats are going to play roles in this Clinton administration.
All right. Let's take a look at some key congressional races now. We'll begin in the 8th Congressional District, where Sheila Smith, the Democrat, was taking on the incumbent Phil Crane. Right now, with 28% of the precincts reporting, Phil Crane is holding on with 56% of the vote.
And stay under. We're in here now by 2 people who, as it happens, can speak as experts on 2 different continents with which America has relations. Shirley Williams, who can speak pretty well for Europe, starting with Britain, and Jorge Dominguez, who can speak for everything south of the border from here. I know it is said, Shirley Williams, that politics stops at the water's edge, and yet it doesn't really quite stop at the water's edge. What would you expect compared to President Bush and his attitude towards Europe, his first-name basis conversations with prime ministers? What would you expect the policy to be under a Clinton administration, knowing that he speaks in somewhat more protectionist terms and maybe may not continue Bush policy in Europe?
I think the position in Europe is very disturbing in many ways. I think that there is real uncertainty about how to deal with some of the major problems that confront Europe, particularly the disintegration of the former Yugoslavia and the beginning of the disintegration of the Russian Federation. And so I think that President Clinton will need fairly early on to establish his own position. I think he ought to support President Bush in certain bipartisan positions vis-a-vis spending the aid that has been voted by Congress in the Russian Federation, vis-a-vis taking steps to try to protect the refugees from the former Yugoslavia. So I would hope that President Clinton will support in his dying months President Bush's initiatives in this field, and I think he has to go some way to assure people that he understands foreign policy. The great doubt about him will be, here is an Arkansas governor, what does he know about foreign policy? The answer is he does know something.
Right.
He's going to have to show it very early on.
And Professor Dominguez, here is President Bush, who has quite a record with regard to Latin America, all the way from El Salvador to Nicaragua, and a very hard policy on Cuba. What would you expect, how would you expect that to change now in the Clinton administration?
Well, I think the Bush administration's record on Latin America really has been very good. If we were having this conversation 4 years ago, we would be talking about civil war in Nicaragua, civil war in El Salvador, economies that were dead in the water, and that has changed. There are many problems in El Salvador and Nicaragua, but not war. There are still many problems in Latin America, but many of the economies are picking up. I think if you look at it from Latin America, the clear question is what will be President Clinton's policy on trade? Will the president go through with the ratification of the North American Free Trade Agreement?
He said he will.
He says he will. He says he wants to improve it. But if I were the president of Mexico, I was just saying to Shirley a moment ago, and I looked at the defeat of a constitutional referendum in Canada and the defeat of President of the United States, I'd be worried. If I were someone in South America expecting to sign a free trade agreement with the United States under what George Bush called the enterprise for the Americas, again, I'd be concerned. What will happen with the future of U.S. trade policy? And to what degree would President Clinton follow through on commitments the United States has made to the little countries, to Central America and the Caribbean, where the U.S. presence is enormous?
Which brings me to the larger question that Governor Clinton, I guess we still have to call him Governor Clinton. Governor Clinton has put a great deal of emphasis on coming back and dealing with the domestic problems in America. Do you have any fears that he may just lose interest in the outside world, including Europe?
Of course, I must have. I mean, I completely understand why he feels he has to concentrate on domestic issues. But I think that there are real troubles in the world outside which he has to address as well. In particular, that NATO is essentially a creature of the Cold War. In order to deal with the new challenges in the world, which are mostly the challenges of civil war and ethnic hatred, NATO has to change its position and decide how it can actually be used as an instrument in some of those wars. And therefore, I think that Governor Clinton inevitably is faced with having to create a revolution of thinking in the whole field of security and defense. That's very tough, but I think a lot is going to turn on who he appoints as Secretary of State, who he appoints as National Security Advisor, because, like it or not, he cannot simply stick to the internal problems. He's got to address the world outside.
Thank you, Professors Williams and Dominguez. Let's go to Harding Carter now.
Thank you very much, Dan. We have back again Roger Wilkins, with whom we've been talking during the evening, Harry Pashon, who is the Executive Director of the National Association of Latino Elected and Appointed Officials, and Orlando Patterson, sociologist at Harvard University. First, sort of mathematical question here. This election represents something in the representation of minorities in elected office in this. What does it represent? What's going on out there?
Well, one of the things is there'll be about 14 new black members of Congress.
And how many Latino?
It's about 17 or 18, depending on what happens in California.
17 new or 17 total?
17 total,
and
which
now,
is a 50% increase.
Yes.
And there will be close to 40 black members of Congress. So that together, that's 57 people. That is significant. I went to Washington when there were 3 black members of Congress. Now up to 40. That is significant.
In the old days,
most of the gain comes from the Old South.
In the Old South. In districts, however, which are basically black districts, Latino districts, drawn, I mean, or are some of these so-called mixed districts?
The blacks are mainly from black districts, I believe.
We still have Latinos coming mainly from Latino districts, over 40%.
All right, so now we have a 50%. Yep, we have a 50% increase. We have a new president, I believe, and if we don't, we're going to be more stunned than anybody else in this world looking at these figures. So, new era maybe in Washington, but nobody was really talking about the basic issues that influence the direction of life for so-called minorities in America. So what's first on the agenda?
Look, I think black voters are quite mature about this. They saw what happened in the last elections. I mean, it's okay to talk about it, but what good is it going to do you if talking about it is going to excite the still powerful residual racist sentiment in the country and allows your opponent to exploit it? I think basically there's a powerful support for Clinton, but there's also a strong recognition of the fact that you want to have a man who wins.
So he's won, and everybody was very sophisticated about this one.
Yeah, and I think everybody understands it.
Sure. But now what happens, though? What do you expect?
Well, that's a problem, because nobody's talked about poverty in this campaign. There are more white people who are poor than there are blacks or Hispanics. And you wonder, having campaigned without talking about poverty, talking only about the middle class, does he have a mandate to do anything about poverty, particularly when there's going to be furious financial pressures on him?
What we have is a mandate to go to a Ross Perot announcement coming on right now. We'll be back.
Wait till 9:30. What time is it now, please? We got about 5 minutes. Now then, Ed, these are the people that did it all. And as we said at the rally the other day, the perfect song for them is When the Saints Go Marching In. Let's go. That's for you.
Now, Ross Perot managed to do the unbelievable throughout this year, and he just did the unbelievable here. He interrupted a show in full progress for the sake of what is going to be a demonstration for a while longer. We'll come back to him in a minute. Let's go back to where we were right now. Things that need to be done, things that weren't talked about. From your point of view, what's there?
We have a unique issue of empowerment in the Hispanic community. More Latinos sat on the political sidelines in this election because they weren't U.S. citizens than actually were registered to vote. So the Clinton administration has this unique opportunity to bring into the political fold the over 5 million Latinos who are permanent residents who are not yet U.S. citizens, including all the amnesty applicants. Will they take up that challenge? That could change the face of Democratic Party politics in the Southwest.
Is that something you expect the newly elected officials, the new congressmen, to be taking with them to Washington?
Oh, we've already received pledges from them, as a matter of fact, that for the Latino congressmen, this is one of the foremost issues.
Top of the agenda. Do you think that the electorate that put the new president into office, and that is to say the mass electorate, was in fact thinking about these issues or will now be receptive to these issues being addressed?
I think so. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that people were greatly influenced by the Los Angeles riots, who have been concerned about the plight of the urban areas. They wanted to hear about it, they didn't. I think it's a deep subtext of the elections was this unstated fact that we've got to do something about urban problems. And when people think about urban problems, they think about the problems of poverty and related issues.
And do you think that that's...
I don't think that I think that he gave them what they wanted, and that was an ability not to think of these issues. But the issue of the cities and poverty is a national security issue. If we don't, it's not a we against what we can do for them. If we don't do that problem, then the country is going to continue to disintegrate. That's all.
Do you see some comparable moment in the past that we ought to say this is like that? Or is this a unique moment going ahead? That is to say, is this 1964 and we're going to see another explosion of legislation? Is this 1960? Is this 19 what? What do I think?
That's the choice that the administration has to choose. I mean, they can, insofar as the Latino community, they can be looking at the model of the JFK, of an administration that captured the Latino vote, or they can be looking at the Jimmy Carter administration back in 1976.
Well, on that note, we are going back out again, or not going back out? We are over now?
Over to Terry.
Okay, we're back over to Terry Gross, or to Ken Walker.
Thanks, Harding. I know it gets a little confusing right now. We have Governor Bill Clinton still holding at 254 electoral college votes, just 16 short of victory. We have Alabama, the state of Alabama, declared for President Bush. That raises his electoral vote total to 64. We have some popular vote totals. These are based on actual votes cast, 32% of the precincts reporting. President Bush has gotten 40%, just over 14.5 million. Governor Clinton has 44%, a little better than 15.5 million. Ross Perot is holding at 17%. That's with 6.2 million. Just a quick note on some term limits. There are 14 on state ballots. They have passed in Florida, Missouri, and Ohio. That is to say, congressional term limits have passed in Florida, Missouri, and Ohio. I gather from here we go to Terry Gross for more interviews. We'll be back.
Go.
I'm Terry Gross, and I'm here with Kate Clinton, who is America's most popular out-of-the-closet lesbian feminist comic. Welcome, Kate.
Thanks, Terry.
This has been called the Year of the Woman. What has that meant to you?
I didn't trust it. First of all, they told us in June. Didn't trust that. And they kept saying the Year of the Woman, and I kept wondering, who is she? But, and then instead of 2 guys, we get 3 guys running for president, so I didn't believe it at all. But in fact, it is the year of a lot of women organizing since, actually, I think since the defeat of the ERA.
When you look at a mostly male Congress, what do you think?
Well, I think it's interesting that when men are all together, they call it, or when women are all together, they call it separatism, but when guys all get together, they call it Congress.
Right. Now, you recently performed in Oregon, where there's an initiative number 9 that's on the ballot, and if voted yes, it would classify homosexuality as abnormal, wrong, unnatural, and perverse. What was it like to perform there in that kind of climate?
And teachers have to teach that it is that way.
Right,
so it was really frightening, and they're in shell shock. and everybody is coming out and making these incredible, courageous stands. I was actually on a plane, and they did the whole thing where somebody got bumped, and they had to take names. So this guy gets on the plane. His last name was Gay, actually. So he went to get on the plane. Somebody was in his seat. Yeah, Mr. Gay gets on the plane. Somebody's in his seat. So he sits somewhere else. They go and try to find him, and they go to this guy who's sitting in his seat, and the flight attendant says, "Well, are you gay?" And the guy goes, "Well, yes, I am gay." And the flight attendant said, "Well, you've got to get off the plane." And then Mr. Gay realizes what's happened, so he goes over and he says, "No, I'm gay." And she says, "Well, you've got to get off the plane." At which time, two wonderful gay men in the middle of the plane stand up and go, "Well, we are gay, and you cannot make us get off this plane."
But that's the kind of level of paranoia.
That is absolutely what's happening.
Do you think Bill Clinton would be a good president for gays?
Absolutely. I think we have to hold him to a lot of his promises of getting an AIDS czar, of eliminating the policy against gays in the military. But yes, I know that like the 96% of gay population that is registered to vote did vote in a great measure for Bill Clinton.
Kate, you know, it's been said that the doctored photos that Perot was talking about, how they were going to doctor his daughter's photos before the wedding to embarrass her. It's been reported that they were going to doctor to make it seem like she was having a lesbian relationship with somebody. What do you make of that?
Was she cute?
What has it been like to be an out-of-the-closet lesbian comic in a Republican era? You started being a comic in 1980, the year that Ronald Reagan
Nobody
was elected.
steals my material, basically. But it's really been kind of easy. I feel I've been cruising a lot with Reagan, who, you know, if he were alive tonight, I think you'd be just astonished by this landslide. But and then Bush, Quayle was a gift, a little like spokesperson for Cliff Notes in many ways. But I'm willing to stretch. I'm willing to work in a new administration. And I thought the ticket should have been me, Kate Clinton, and Leslie Gore.
Thanks for being with us, Kate. We're going to go back to Kenneth now.
Thanks, Terry.
Charlotte, two-party system has failed. They say they are calling this presidential race a and they say they are political pioneers, with the deficit being the new frontier. Reporting live from Ross Perot's campaign headquarters, I'm Carol Davis Dillard. Back to you, Rick, Allison, and Joel.
From Perot campaign headquarters here in Chicago, back to Ross, the boss, down in Dallas. Let's see if he has something to say.
Thank you very much.
It heats and cools your home. When you want high efficiency, ask for American Standard and Citywide Heating and Air Conditioning. You'll be satisfied with Citywide. American Standard, built to a higher standard.
Outside.
CNN Headline News. I'm Lynn Russell. The Bill Clinton-Al Gore steamroller continues to make its way across America's electoral landscape. Indications are the Arkansas Democrat and his running mate are running well all over the country, and Clinton's well on his way to becoming the President of the United States. Chuck Roberts has been following the election returns all night. We check in with him now for those and for a new development. Chuck?
Indeed, the Ross Perot development. He is approaching the microphone in Dallas right now, and here is his speech. He has, of course, spent almost $100 million in this campaign, has failed to win a single electoral vote.
I want to thank all of you who are here tonight and all the people who have come together across the nation. Starting last February, you did something that everybody said couldn't be done. Millions of you came together to take your country back. You gave Washington a laser-like message to listen to the people. You have done an incredible job of getting this country turned back around to the type country our founders established, a country that came from the people. And you have changed this country through your massive efforts. And I compliment you for it. And it was brilliant the way you did it. As I've said on a number of occasions, my role in life is that of the grain of sand to the oyster. It irritates the oyster and out comes a pearl. I have been your grain of sand that you chose. It has been an honor to be your grain of sand in this process, and we will continue to work together to make pearls as necessary in the future. Fair enough? Great. The American people have spoken. They have chosen Governor Clinton. Congratulations. Wait a minute. No. Whoop. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. The only way we're going to make it work if all team up together. So let's give Governor Clinton a big round of applause. He's won. Right there.
A healing message from Ross Perot, a very genteel and gracious one, I might add. Of course, his campaign was marked by humor and good-naturedness in the last few days, in stark contrast to the earlier combativeness in a few days ago when he complained about Republican dirty tricksters. But Ross Perot is asking the nation and his volunteers specifically to rally around Bill Clinton, who...
You, the American people, are the greatest people on the face of the earth. And if we will just put our differences aside and team up together, we can rebuild our job base. We can eliminate the deficit. We can eliminate the debt. And most importantly, we can pass on the American dream to our children, right? And on the way, we can reform our government and get rid of some of these problems that are so damaging to all of us. Now, to the millions of volunteers who asked me to serve as your candidate, as long as I live, one of the happiest memories of my life will be the memory of working with you. That memory will never dim. It's the nicest honor I will ever receive in my life. Thank you very much. There are people here tonight and there are people across the country who literally gave it everything they had 7 days a week since last February to take this country back and give it to the people, to pay its debts, to pass the American dream on to our children. And I want you to know how proud I am of you and how much all of us owe you for the tremendous effort you made. So God bless you and thank you very much. No, it's just the beginning, but the next step is we need to take all of our energy and harness it and try. See, time is not our friend. Time is our enemy. These problems our country faces need to be solved immediately. We need to all work together and work with the new administration and give it a world-class best effort to get these problems solved now. Because if we do, you benefit, the country benefits, your children benefits, and everybody wins. We've got to do it. Spend about 10 minutes getting over being frustrated that your candidate didn't win. Then take all of this enormous creativity and talent that you have displayed, and let's make our country work at the national, state, county, city, local, and neighborhood level, and at every single school across the country, right? Absolutely. Now, the fact that we will go anywhere, anytime, and do anything that's good for our country to help the new administration as an organization does not mean that we will compromise our principles or integrity in terms of what this organization stands for. serve.
That is vintage Ross Perot, and at one point making a concession to Governor Clinton that he is, or soon will be. And as a matter of fact, we have a new stat that Wisconsin has now fallen into the Clinton column, and that gives Bill Clinton 265 of the 270 electoral votes that he needs, and it seems almost now that he is a shoo-in, although we cannot yet call that. But a rather gracious Ross Perot saying, let's work with the governor now, let's wish him well. And when his supporters there in Dallas said no, as is standard fare.
I think history will record Perot as a plus, as a genuine contribution to the process and to keeping this election on balance and keeping it more on the issues. An AP poll shows that among his voters, they would have split equally. If they didn't vote for him, half would have voted for Bush, half would have voted for Clinton, about 20% wouldn't have voted at all. But in key states like Texas, he probably hurt Bush an awful lot.
That's very interesting. I wonder if upstairs, do we have the popular vote, the president's race, and update those numbers, or?
Maybe.
All right, let's take a look at the electoral vote map first. As we mentioned, 265, and Bill Clinton is within 5 electoral votes now of seizing the White House from the incumbent president, George Bush. George Bush showing up as the winner only in those states that we see in red, only a half a dozen or so, including the state of Indiana, where his vice president, Dan Quayle, is. Here's the popular vote with a little over 1/3 of the tally now in. Now, Joel, let's talk about this for a second. Look at the numbers now. If Ross Perot, according to that AP survey, had not been a factor, you take 8 percentage points for Bill Clinton, 8 percentage points for George Bush, and it becomes a little bit more interesting race.
Yeah, would have been a little more interesting, but Clinton still would have won. And again, in our system, the popular vote isn't nearly as crucial as the electoral vote, and that's where Clinton had his important majority.
One other quick footnote, and that is that after all is said and done, people take a rather wide swing at polls, and yet the polling numbers late in the campaign are fairly well being borne out by the popular vote that we are seeing tonight.
Yeah, it was pretty accurate polling, although I guess you have to say which poll are you talking about.
The poll of polls.
The poll of polls turned out to be pretty right. No, they're pretty accurate. They really are, and everybody harkens back to Harry Truman, but boy, that was a long, long time ago, and they've been accurate for a long time.
Far less sophisticated, computers were not around, and so many other factors.
Yep. All right, thank you, Joel.
Okay.
Well, we're going to take a break from our election night coverage for sports, believe it or not, and the aftermath of last night's Bears defeat.
And the Blackhawks run into trouble on the road, as Allison said. Dan Roan is next, and he's got all this day's news in sports.
A live cancer cell. Watch as your body's own immune cells kill it. Amazing? To us, it's just the beginning. The Cancer Research Institute funds research that's begun to make immunological treatment possible. To find out more, to support our work, call today.
It's so scary.
I can't even feed my kids. He said he'd kill me. Look at all the birth defects. Babies are dying. He was my family doctor. I trusted him.
At Continental Bank, we try to get to you with solutions before you realize you need them. Continental Bank, anticipating the needs of business. At Continental Bank, we try to get to you with solutions before you realize you need them. Continental Bank, anticipating the needs of business.
The athletic trainers of every major pro sport recommend one pain-relieving gel, Flexol 454. I use it for my kind of pain. And now aloe vera-based Flexol is used almost everywhere. In tennis clubs, backyard gardens, on the golf course, bike paths, road races. Flexol is just about everywhere people suffer from sore muscles and joints. If you're living with pain, join the pro trainers, me and everybody else. Get Flexol, the pain relief pro trainers recommend.
Tonight's sports segment is brought to you by Zenith and your Zenith dealers, bringing you the best in electronics. At Zenith, the quality goes in before the name goes on.
A picture can say 1,000 words. Now with Zenith Color Television, it truly does. Zenith is the first TV ever to combine state-of-the-art technology with a choice of closed captioning as an aid to entertainment and learning. For true innovation in television, ask to see a Zenith.
Well, the popular vote is in, and Dan Rowan is the best sportscaster in the city. Hope you got a good sportscast.
So nice. And as I do every 4 years, I'd like to thank Joel for totally trashing my day. Every election year. Well, I can say this. Geography is not a factor for the Blackhawks. Home, road, or neutral ice, they stink up the building. The NHL is trying to pique interest in the sport at Indianapolis by scheduling Chicago and Washington there tonight. The people at Indy may never want a franchise after what they saw in this game. And there's such fun-loving people down there, too. Daryl Sutter probably wanted to disguise himself after the
CNN headline
game.
Is your long-distance company getting nosy? Do they want names of people close to you? Do they want their numbers, too?
1-0.
You may think of your phone line.
Is that Ross Perot is about to get back into the race.
Right. That's great. So this is the first time that you've caricatured a presidential candidate, and it looks like he's on his way to becoming the president. Who's of your generation? Has that made a difference in how you draw him?
Yeah, it's a little strange. I'm actually suspicious of the gray hair. Ronald Reagan, of course, stayed in office dyeing his hair dark to be youthful. I'm suspicious that Bill Clinton actually may be dyeing his hair gray to look more presidential.
You actually met him, and he gave you some advice on how to caricature.
I met him briefly. I was introduced as a cartoonist, and he told me that he would be a cartoonist dream because of this terrific nose that he sports, which he described as looking like a light bulb. So, in fact, this whole election has been something of a cartoonist dream in terms of hilarity, caricaturable faces, and...
We've just got a few more seconds.
Really? Okay,
Yeah.
well, I'll try and get this big chin in here.
And as you're talking, I'm wondering, like, do you think that political cartoonists should be like equal opportunity humor, where you lampoon everybody equally?
No, definitely not. No. You got to have a point of view. You got to say something.
Why don't you hold it up, because we've got to...
we got to get out of here?
Yeah. They're giving us the wrap-up sign,
Okay.
so let's see what we got.
Very quick.
Here we
Bill's
go.
celebrating. There he is.
Okay, Dan Wasserman, thank you very much.
Well, thanks.
And now we're going to move along to Harding Carter.
Thank you, and we're back again with an issue which they tell me this entire election was about, which is the economy. Here to talk about it briefly, Juliet Schor, professor of economics at Harvard University, Robert Lenzner, senior editor of Forbes magazine, and a man who's written extensively in this field, and also back again, Glenn Lowry. All right, new administration comes in. What do they have to do? They have a mandate to do something about the economy. What do they do?
Well, first of all, they've got to stimulate the economy to deliver on the jobs promised.
Deficit? More deficit?
Absolutely.
Stimulate the economy.
Secondly, what they need to do is get some global coordination for macroeconomic growth, get together with Europe and Japan to try and have a coordinated macro policy.
Easy to do?
Very hard to do. They're not going to be able to do much about the deficit right away. There's no engine of growth in the world. They must stimulate the American economy. They're going to put a big tax on the rich. Probably will go down to the middle class to raise enough money. It's going to take quite a while to get the economy moving back off its very slow base. Therefore, it's going to be impossible to do anything right away about the deficit. He won't be able to do anything about the deficit, despite his campaign pledge.
So we're going to stimulate the economy. We are going to lay taxes maybe down to the middle class. We're going to coordinate a world economy which has no engine of growth. What's going to happen?
Well, I have to be a naysayer. I think we may see stimulation, but I'm not persuaded that that's what we ought to see. I think we're already starting to see some movement in terms of coming out of the recovery. I worry about inflation. I worry about long-term interest rates. Any stimulation that's done is going to take a year, year and a half, 2 years before it really has an effect. We may already be in a recovery by then. And I also worry about the underclass, not just the middle class. I mean, we saw a campaign that was aimed at the middle class. Middle class is hurting, middle class jobs. I'm worrying about the people who are really locked out and at the bottom, and the extent to which anything real will be delivered to them.
57% or something in the exit polls said getting rid of the deficit is really important. You don't think so?
It's not. First of all, there's a worldwide savings which can be used to help fund this deficit. In the long term, the deficit matters, but what's much more important is using government spending to get the economy going again, because of the lost output that you have in a recession is more of a problem than a short-term deficit.
I think the reason they're saying that about the deficit is because of Perot's ads. He's the only one really to have addressed clear economic issues in this campaign. The reason why Bush lost by so much is because he didn't address it, didn't tell the American people he really wanted to do something for ordinary wage slaves in the American economy. Clinton said he was going to, but it's very mushy as to what his plan is about. And I think that if that's what they're saying about the deficit, they don't really understand what the main issues of the economy are. And I think that is really quite surprising and shows that an educational program about what was wrong with America was not done during this campaign.
That's very interesting. That assumes that somebody really knows what this economy is all about. You all know what this economy is all about?
Well, the economy is changing a lot, but I think we have some idea. One thing I want to say is about the inflation issue. What this economy needs is a little bit of inflation. One of the big problems with getting the economy out of the recession is that we've got deflation, and firms are having a difficult time getting going again in an environment of deflation. The other good thing about inflation is that it will erode away a little bit of this mass, great creation of wealth that we had among the very top few percent in the Reagan-Bush years.
Very few seconds now.
Well, let me just note that if Governor Clinton had run on that campaign, he wouldn't be going over the top right now.
We have Ken Walker has something to tell us right now. Ken.
Well, Harding, according to the network projections, Arkansas Governor Bill Clinton has the necessary electoral votes to be the 42nd president of the United States. Ohio, the state of Ohio, with its 21 electoral votes, has just been called for Arkansas Governor Bill Clinton, bringing him to a grand total so far. It's not over, but so far of 286 electoral votes. Only 270 were needed to win. President Bush, of course, is stuck at 64 electoral votes, but once again, the commercial networks are projecting that Arkansas Governor Bill Clinton is elected the 42nd president of the United States. Now we go to Nancy Dickerson with more interviews.
I'm back in the Critics' Corner, and we have an edition of Bill Kovich, who is the curator of the Neiman Foundation at Harvard, Bill Henry again from Time Magazine, and Kathleen Hall-Jamieson from the Annenberg School of Communications. In this campaign, we've had an awful lot of conversation things written about the private affairs of the candidates. I'd like to ask each of you, has the press handled this well, with discretion, with taste, particularly starting with President-elect, it appears now, Governor Clinton's alleged affair with Jennifer Flowers? Has the press been discreet about all this?
I think the establishment political press blew that story from the very beginning and allowed tabloid journalism to bring those issues into the field in the wrong context. Every journalist in America knew that Bill Clinton had a problem with his personal relationships before the campaign started, and that issue should have been dealt with then in terms of his ability to solve a problem and how he dealt with it. And by not doing that, they left the issue out there to be defined by the supermarket star and to turn it into an issue that had no relevance, no meaning, no use for the voter.
And obviously the voters didn't seem to hold it against him one way or another. Bill Henry?
Yeah, I think that people will accept imperfections unless they're given a perfect candidate. Certainly the weird thing is that no respectable newspaper would allow its own reporters to use the standards that the Star did in running the Jennifer Flowers story, but then they all reported the fact that the Star had reported it or that someone else had. And we've seen this syndrome over and over again in the last few years. It's pretty ugly. I also think that the establishment press did an equally lousy job on the other Jennifer Fitzgerald, President Bush's known close friend and alleged mistress. There is plenty that has not made its way into print, and journalists were absolutely unwilling to touch this story.
Well, so they were. I'm a little astonished that you're handling it that way right now. But anyway, we only have one last moment.
If you're going to do one, you should do all.
Okay.
And they didn't.
There is a moment, however, in the fall campaign in which the press vindicated itself, and that is in looking at the false claim by Perot that Bush was trying to malign his daughter and ruin her wedding.
Thank you all very much. Bill Henry, Kathleen, and Bill Kovich. Now to Harding Carter.
Thank you again. It's good to be back again, Nancy. At the end of our program, I am now free to say, with that announcement, what has been striking me all night, that at least on the surface, what you have is one of those elections that are always described as page turners. A new generation is, in fact, in charge, a generation untouched by the war. strangely enough, I say as a Southerner, a Southern new generation representing an almost totally different kind of South from the one that was fashioned afterward.
I have felt, even before the election, that whomever won, even if the president was reelected, that the American people were still, for the next 4 years, taking a somewhat leap of faith in terms of where we're going. I still think we don't know where we're going. It might take another 4 years to figure that out, but it's going to be different in new times, I think, for the next 4 years.
It seems to me that I've seen a lot of elections, and older that I get, the more I find that conventional wisdom tends in the end to be plunged into the dust. Here we had an election where we thought that negatives were going to work, and negatives didn't work. A whole series of issues that were supposed to be very potent turned out to be quite impotent. Americans were supposed to be turned off on everything. They turned out in droves to express themselves, and it's the miracle of rebirth of this country that always amazes me.
Look at this optimism. Nancy, what do you think as the evening comes to an end?
Well, I think I'm rather saddened by what George Bush must be going through now. He's a good and decent man, and I think we owe him a good deal of thanks for the National Trust. The other thing I hope is that Governor Clinton, President-elect Clinton, arrives in Washington running, and he gets his programs done in the first 100 days.
I'm not sure. Perhaps in the next hour. You know, the numbers are coming in so slowly. We didn't do exit polling. We don't know a lot. Okay. Andy Knott, campaign spokesman for Jack O'Malley, feeling here is tonight that Jack O'Malley is one Republican, perhaps the only Republican, who is going to cruise to victory. Reporting live from O'Malley headquarters, I'm Steve Sanders. Rick, Allison, back to you.
All right, Steve, thank you. And we should underscore that this is a probability, but this has not yet been projected, much less declared. Jack O'Malley, with about half of the tally in, is leading his Democratic challenger, Alderman Pat O'Connor. The tally 64% in O'Malley's column, 36% in O'Connor's column, but this one is not yet over. There are the latest numbers that we have again, with just under half of the vote counted. Let's go from O'Malley campaign headquarters, where there is a note of celebration, over to O'Connor campaign headquarters. Check in with WGN's Muriel Clare and find out how things are going there. Muriel?
Well, Rick and Allison, I can tell you that it looks like a celebration and it sounds like a celebration over here. And in fact, they say that until they know for sure that there is not a cause for celebration, they will continue as they have begun this evening. They have heard the numbers just as we heard Steve talking about them, but they're not giving up yet. They believe that because Clinton and Braun had such a strong showing in Illinois, they still think that they will be swept into office on the coattails of those two. Now, they say that they know that they have been very strong with the black voters. They're just not sure of what the numbers are here. The numbers are coming in rather slowly over here, but as you can probably hear, there's a celebration going on, and they're not giving up. It looks like it's going to be a long night, and in fact, we will be here until it's over. Reporting live from the Drake Hotel, I'm Muriel Clare. Back to you, Stephen. Back to you, I'm sorry, Rick and Allison and Joel.
All right, Muriel, thank you. Well, we want to go someplace where the party is definitely going on, and I'm talking about Clinton headquarters here in Chicago, where Roseanne Tellez is standing by. Roseanne.
Well, Allison, with word that Bill Clinton has just gone over the top with the number of electoral votes needed to put him in the White House, the crowd here was going crazy just a moment ago, still very excited. And joining me now is Bill Daley, who, of course, chaired the campaign for Bill Clinton in Illinois. Tell us, what does this mean for the people of Illinois?
Well, I think it's a massive victory for all people in that they indicated that they want a serious change in their government. This sort of mandate is not just about tinkering with the edges, but a real substantive, serious change.
And you expect to see changes, the promises kept about infrastructure changes in big cities like Chicago?
Absolutely. I think you're going to see a serious effort by the federal government under President Clinton to address the problems of urban areas, not just cities, but the entire urban areas.
What about some of our local politicians? We expect to see a lot of people rise to the national scene now. What does this mean for Illinois politics?
Well, I would hope so. Governor Clinton was wise enough to pick a lot of people from Illinois to be involved in this campaign. They're very bright, progressive young people who can add a lot to this country. And so we all hope that those people will go in and help him in the administration.
Thank you very much. Bill Daley, who chaired the campaign for Bill Clinton here in Illinois. As I told you a moment ago, there's clearly a celebration here, and to be honest with you, they've been celebrating for quite some time, even though it was not official. Reporting live from the Hilton Towers, I'm Roseanne Tejas. Back to you, Rick and Allison.
Okay, Roseanne, thank you. And we told you a minute ago that Bill Clinton has gone over the top in terms of the total number of electoral votes that he needed. You'll be noticing there are a couple of real big states not yet in either column, those undecided states with lots of electoral votes down in Florida and in Texas. California expected to go into the Clinton column when their polls close shortly. And right now, 286, that's 16 more than he needs. Bill Clinton is now President-elect Clinton, and we will be seeing a swearing-in ceremony with his name all over it come January at the White House.
And you just saw Bill Daley, and there's a lot of people who think that Bill Daley is going to be a part of this Clinton administration, if not directly in administration.
In what capacity?
Perhaps the new Democratic national chairman or a big role on the Democratic National Committee.
A lot of Illinoisans involved in the campaign down Little Rock, from Avis Lavelle, who was the press spokesperson for Bill Clinton, to David Wilhelm, who was running the campaign as a campaign manager and a prominent Chicagoan and Illinoisan.
And of course, you know, Clinton is going to appoint a new U.S. attorney, and some people say that could be Susan Getzendanner, the former federal judge. But Daley has become, Bill Daley I'm talking about, has really become a major national power as a behind-the-scenes operator in the Democratic Party. And of course, previously it was in losing efforts, but did well in the responsibilities that were assigned to him.
So this is all good and well for the political.
Predicts.
Days ago, she's like.
One by
Also got a weather forecast that you...
Metropolitan Federal, the Heartland's bank.
There have been some great grills in history. But nothing like the new Village Grills at Village Inn. 4 big, beautiful banquets on bread, all destined to be classics. We've got what you're hungry for.
The stage is set in Little Rock, Arkansas. All that's needed for the party to really begin is the guest of honor, the next President of the United States. CNN Headline News, I'm David Goodnow. This history-making election night. After 12 years, the United States of America will have a Democratic president and perhaps just as importantly, a Democratic House and Senate too. Chuck Roberts is standing by at our update desk with all the details. Chuck.
David, good evening. Thank you. You've said it well and said it all, actually. Americans can heave a sigh of relief collectively. It is finally over. They can also start getting used to a new character on the political scene, President-elect Bill Clinton. We just showed you the live pictures from Little Rock. That's outside the State House right now, the Arkansas State House. Supporters are gathered, waiting to hear from the next President of the United States. Mr. Clinton was declared the winner a few moments ago. Ohio, a delegate-rich state, came down in his favor, and that put him over the top. Here's how the Arkansas governor won one of the most unusual elections in American history. The electoral map looks like this. The blue goes to Clinton, the red for President Bush, who won part in the Rocky Mountain West. Clinton also won in Georgia, another toss-up state. He has won both the electoral and the popular vote. He is ahead 5 percentage points over the president right now. And if we can check a few states while we're talking about the presidential race, he's already been declared the winner in California, where the polls have just closed. That was never in question. He is also the winner in Oregon. Bill Clinton wins the 7 electoral votes at stake there. He has won in Washington State with 11 electoral votes. and he probably will win. He has been declared the winner in Hawaii with 4 electoral votes. President Bush went to a reception dinner tonight in his official residence, the Houstonian Hotel in Texas. He then retired to his suite, reportedly to work on his concession speech. Right now, we're still waiting for the president to appear and deliver that speech. The independent candidate, Ross Perot, though, has already said he had a great time in this case, running his unorthodox campaign for president. And in his official concession speech about 30 minutes ago, he kept up the show. Well, we hope to bring you that a little later. Before congratulating Clinton on his victory, he danced to his self-described official campaign song, Crazy, with his daughter. The Clinton win will help boost the Democratic majority in Congress, as Dave mentioned, and the numbers of women could be doubled. 2 of those women will be coming from the same state, California. Representative Barbara Boxer had a tough fight with Reaganite Republican Bruce Hershenson, the former TV commentator, but she managed to hang on for the win. Former San Francisco Mayor Dianne Feinstein scored solid numbers this evening against
flowers, and that's right. Snow could accumulate in some areas. A mixture of rain and snow is falling in the southeastern areas as well. The snow is reducing.
Bill Clinton's victory tonight. It was a remarkable victory. This is a man who, in June of 1992, had a 15 favorable and a 30 unfavorable rating in the New York Times CBS poll, as low as any national candidate known in the history of polling. And yet he pulled himself up by his bootstraps. Yes, with the help of Ross Perot's taking over the attention at that point on the political stage, pulled himself up to the point where he mounted a campaign, resolved in large part people's doubts about him, stayed on his own message, ran the campaign on his own terms, was not diverted except for a couple of times where he seemed to go for the bait, but showed remarkable discipline, sure-footedness, especially for somebody on the first time out. Let's remember this about American presidential politics. Very few people, even the gifted, successful candidates like Ronald Reagan, make it the first time out. This guy did. Bill Clinton did. He came from a little bitty state, and he beat an incumbent president of the United States. No mean achievement, a remarkable personal triumph.
The polls have just closed in California or on the West Coast, and the networks wasted no time in calling California, Hawaii, and Oregon are added to that list. So that puts Clinton way over 300, like 54 alone from California, so he is well over 300 now. Going back to picking up on Mark's point, David, when this whole thing began, Bill Clinton was considered, well, a guy he would run the first time this time, maybe, but all the big guns did not run because George Bush was invincible. It's an amazing story.
It is an incredible story. Jim, I talked to him the night he declared in Little Rock, and he knew this was a long shot right from the beginning. You know, it was more realistic to think that this time out would give him experience to go out and be a strong candidate in 1996. He's been counted out of this election before. He was counted out, you know, there was this line down in Georgia, South Georgia, early in this campaign, the primaries. They said, yeah, we're not sure about Elvis Presley. We know one thing for sure, Bill Clinton is dead. And he came back from the dead. I think Mark is right. He ran a remarkable campaign. He ran, in my judgment, the best Democratic campaign I've seen in my adult lifetime. And I think the Republicans, frankly, ran one of the worst I've ever seen.
As good as you guys are, if either one of you had said on the McNeil-Lehrer NewsHour a year ago that we would be discussing what we're discussing now, we probably would never have had you back.
That's correct.
That's how enormous the story is. Exactly.
That's the reason we didn't say it. Yeah. We both thought it at the time.
That's right.
All right, Robin?
A different perspective now from 2 pollsters who've been with us a lot recently, Democrat Peter Hart and Republican Richard Worthlin. Gentlemen, give us a feeling for the dimensions of this victory as it's now projected to be, Richard. How big is it? Is it a landslide? How does it compare with other victories in the past?
Well, Robin, it surely looks like a landslide from the electoral perspective. However, the 5-point gap in the popular vote falls far short of a landslide. To give you the perspective, Ronald Reagan won by about a 10-point margin in 1980, boosted that to about a 19-point margin in 1984. Both Johnson and Nixon had margins in excess of 20%. So,
of course, they did not have strong third candidates cutting into the popular vote.
That's right. But even with the third candidate in 1980, Reagan had about a 10-point lead. I think that there is no question that this gives Bill Clinton an opportunity to build a mandate, but I don't think in terms of
the popular vote, he's quite there yet.
Peter Hart, how would you describe the dimensions of this victory tonight?
Well, if
and you predicted it a year ago, didn't you?
Well, if you'll permit me, I'll simply say how sweet it is. I mean, as Democrats, we've been out in the woods for a long time, and I say, thank you, Bill Clinton, thank you, Al Gore. And now let me talk about the contours of the victory to give you some sense of where it's at. With basically Reagan Democrats, 55% of those that had voted in 1984 for Ronald Reagan now voted for Bill Clinton. Less than 1 in 4 voted for George Bush. White men, Democrats,